Chapter 2170. The night was getting darker and darker. In the holy residence, the holy son was sitting in front of his desk as usual, seriously reading the documents in his hand. For the holy son who longed for peace, working through the night was a very common thing. Recently, Tokyo had been in a lot of trouble because of the Five Xiong Association. The holy son naturally hoped to work harder to restore peace in Tokyo as soon as possible. Therefore, the holy son was constantly reading the documents, causing a lot of documents to pile up on his desk. However, even so, there were still a lot of documents waiting for the holy son to read, piling up on the other side of the desk. The holy son kept reading the documents like this, as if he didn't notice how late it was. In fact, these documents didn't need to be read by tomorrow, but it would take a few days of work to finish. With the holy son's current reading speed, there was no need to rush at all, it would be finished sooner or later. However, the holy son had no intention of stopping at all, and had been working hard all the time. At this rate, the holy son of heaven wouldn't stop until it was late at night, right? If it was in the past, the holy son would definitely work hard until late at night without anyone looking after him. Unfortunately, for the past 2 months, there was someone who had been watching over this hard-working girl and supervising her when she went to bed. And now, this person came as usual, and before the holy son noticed, he reached out from behind and took away the document he was reading. The holy son was startled at first, but immediately understood what was going on, and the serious expression on his face began to relax. However, someone wouldn't let it go so easily. Bang! Along with the sound of knocking, the hand holding the document hit Elysian son of heaven's head hard. The holy son couldn't help but cry out in pain, holding his head, and turned his eyes angrily, looking behind him. There, Noah was holding the document the holy son was reading, staring at the holy son, and said in a somewhat unfriendly tone. "How many times do I have to tell you? Are you still planning to work through the night?" The holy son was speechless, and looked a little guilty. I just want to work a little longer. A little while." Noah looked at Elysian son of heaven with a thoughtful expression. "Is it really only for a short while?" It really only took a short while. The holy son of heaven's gaze began to shift. "The one you're holding, I plan to end it after reading it." "Is that so?" Noah smiled and raised the document in his hand. "But I don't believe it." After he said that, Noah forcefully knocked the holy son of heaven's head, causing the holy son of heaven to let out a soft cry. The holy son of heaven held his head and looked at Noah as if he had been wronged. If the people in the Tokyo area knew that the holy and pure son of heaven was actually acting like a little girl, they would definitely be scared out of their wits, right? On the other hand, Noah was already used to how the holy son behaved in private. When they first started dating, the holy son of heaven wasn't like this. He was no longer as pure and holy in front of Noah. At most, he would blush from time to time. However, after 2 months of dating, although Noah and the holy son of heaven were always busy during the day, one was busy with the matters in Fairyland, the other was busy with the matters in the Tokyo area, dutifully performing their duties as rulers. But when it came to night time, the two of them got along like lovers. Of course, the holy son of heaven became more and more defenseless in front of Noah, and from time to time, he would act like a little girl, which could really make a lot of people's jaws drop to the ground. Looking at the holy son of heaven's somewhat angry look, Noah felt that it was funny, but also felt that it was funny. After throwing the document in his hand on the desk, he reached out and pulled the holy son of heaven up. Then, Noah sat on the holy son of heaven's seat, and then pulled the holy son of heaven into his arms, letting the ruler of Tokyo sit on his lap. The holy son of heaven's face was slightly red, but he did not resist, and just twisted his body a few times as if he was not used to it. Paw dash. In the next second, a crisp sound came from behind the holy son of heaven. "Ah!" The holy son of heaven exclaimed again, and covered his face completely red. Noah smiled playfully, shrugged, and said so. Don't move, let me hug you for a while. I didn't say you can't hug me. The Holy Son of Heaven's face was red, and protested with a mosquito-like voice. Why did you hit me there? Who asked you to be dishonest? Noah looked at the Holy Son of Heaven with a smile, and said somewhat dangerously. If you don't listen to me, I'll continue to hit you. The Holy Son of Heaven immediately covered his butt, and shook his head with a red face, which made Noah really have the urge to continue hitting him. Fortunately, Noah's moral integrity was not lacking, and the Holy Son of Heaven was lucky enough to escape this calamity. You. The smile on Noah's face gradually disappeared, and he lovingly pinched the Holy Son of Heaven's little nose. Next time, you can't work too late, okay? Hearing Noah's words, the redness on the Holy Son of Heaven's face faded bit by bit, and the girlish appearance that only Noah could see also began to disappear without a trace. After a moment of silence, the Holy Son of Heaven spoke softly. Are you planning to leave? Yes. Noah did not hide, and nodded. After all, the international conference is over, the problems of the world have been solved, the military forces in the Tokyo area are back in action, and even the Wuxiang Association has been completely captured. I should return to Fairyland. Hearing this, the Holy Son of Heaven nodded, and his expression did not change much. After all, the Holy Son of Heaven understood Noah's position very well. As the president of Fairyland, Noah could not always stay in the Tokyo area, and would always need to return to Fairyland. Today, as the largest independent country in the world, and also carrying the hope of all humans in the world, Fairyland's position in the world has long been extraordinary. Under such circumstances, with Noah's ability, he would definitely be able to lead Fairyland and bring a bright future for humans. This was the future that the Holy Son of Heaven hoped to see. The future that he had hoped to see before he became the Holy Son of Heaven. However, in the past, the Holy Son of Heaven had never found a way to walk towards this future, and while he hated his own powerlessness, he could only sigh. Now, the man he loved had realized the Holy Son of Heaven's dream, which made the Holy Son of Heaven overjoyed. To put it bluntly, the Holy Son of Heaven was proud of Noah. And as the ruler of a country, the Holy Son of Heaven naturally understood Noah as well. As such, the Holy Son of Heaven naturally could not bind Noah to a small Tokyo area. The stage of this man that she loved was not the Tokyo area, but the world. With that in mind, the Holy Son of Heaven's eyes still showed some reluctance. Seeing this clearly, Noah hugged the holy girl in his arms and said, "Don't worry, I will be back." The Holy Son of Heaven nodded, his eyes never leaving Noah. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow." Noah answered directly. "I will take a special plane back to Fairyland early in the morning." In other words, tomorrow, Noah and the Holy Son of Heaven would not have time to meet. Farewell, tonight. The Holy Son of Heaven clenched his hands as he thought of this. Looking at Noah's face, his heart began to beat faster. "You." The Holy Son of Heaven's face blushed again as he spoke in a low voice. "Do you still remember what I said to you when you left 3 years ago?" 3 years ago. Noah was confused. "Which one?" "That one." The Holy Son of Heaven's voice became lower and lower as his face became redder and redder. "My confidants in the sanctuary have been urging me to give birth to a child as soon as possible, this one." Noah was enlightened. "Of course I remember this." Before he could finish, Noah's face froze as he looked at the Holy Son of Heaven in shock. Then, Noah smiled. There was really no more direct hint than this. "Ah!" The Holy Son of Heaven screamed for the umpteenth time. But this time, it was Noah who carried the Holy Son of Heaven in a princess carry and walked towards the bed. The Holy Son of Heaven's face became redder than ever as he buried his head in Noah's arms. Not long after, a pure white wedding dress floated to the ground. The night gradually blurred. Chapter 2171. The next morning. Warm sunlight shone in through the window and onto the room, reflecting a hazy glow. Noah slowly put on his coat. After tidying up his clothes, he picked up the white wedding dress that had fallen on the ground and placed it on the hanger at the side. After doing all this, Noah turned his head and looked forward. Phew, the rhythmic sound of breathing could be heard. Under the blankets, one could vaguely see her exquisite collarbone and white, smooth skin. Her pretty face was not as sacred as it used to be. Instead, it was slightly flushed, making her look very attractive. On the spacious bed, the Holy Son of Heaven was lying under the blanket. Only her white shoulders were exposed. She was sleeping very peacefully. Looking at the adorable girl's naivety, Noah's heart was filled with pity. Noah reached out his hand and gently smoothed the hair of the holy and alluring girl. Then, he kissed the Holy Son of Heaven's forehead and murmured in a low voice as if he was sleep-talking. "Wait for me to come back." After that, Noah looked deeply at the Holy Son of Heaven, then turned around and walked towards the door. Gotcha! With a slight creak, Noah opened the door. Bang! With the soft sound of the door closing, Noah disappeared from this space. The whole room returned to silence, but the warm atmosphere in the air did not dissipate. Ugh! After an unknown amount of time, the Holy Son of Heaven slowly woke up with a soft moan. The Holy Son of Heaven first looked around in a daze, then suddenly woke up and subconsciously got up. A corner of the blanket fell from the Holy Son of Heaven's body, exposing the Holy Son of Heaven's extremely curvaceous and seductive back. Just like that, the young girl held on to the blanket, protecting the front of her body, while her gaze swept around her surroundings. She did not find the figure that she could see clearly even in her dreams. The Holy Son of Heaven seemed to understand something and muttered. Did he leave? The Holy Son of Heaven looked at the clothes on the hanger and felt the warmth and smell of the man in love. The Holy Son of Heaven took a deep breath and looked out of the window and muttered to herself. Have a safe journey, my beloved. After coming out of the holy residence, Noah turned his head and looked in the direction of a window as if he had been enlightened. Noah glanced at that place with some reluctance. After which, he did not linger any longer and directly walked forward. In front of the holy residence, a luxurious limousine seemed to have been waiting for a long time. When Noah walked up, the driver immediately got down from the driver's seat and opened the door facing the holy residence. Noah got in the car and drove forward with the luxurious limousine. The scenery outside the window continued to pass by. After a while, the holy residence was completely out of sight. However, Noah would never forget. There, a person was waiting for him. This time, I will not let you wait for 3 years. This sentence naturally came out of Noah's mouth. Under such circumstances, the limousine gradually went away and drove along the road to the end of the endless road. The private plane to Fairyland was not in the airport but in another area. After all, the police belonging to Fairy Tale also needed to follow Noah and his group back to Fairyland and the guild. A total of nearly 2,000 people naturally could not enter the airport together, otherwise it would definitely cause a commotion. Besides, when the police officers from Fairy Tale came to the Tokyo area, they took a military helicopter instead of a regular plane. Naturally, they wouldn't be waiting at the airport. For the sake of these military helicopters, the Holy Son of Heaven had specially cleared out a large area in the outer region for the use of Fairy Tale. Usually, there were police from Fairy Tale stationed here, so there was no need to worry about safety. In the limousine, Noah came directly to the airport. Here, pairs of police had already gathered and were chatting in the vast area. Mugging, Rentaro, Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju were also present. Behind the police, there were hundreds of military helicopters parked there. It was a spectacular sight. The president is here. At a certain moment, a sharp-eyed child called out, causing everyone present to instantly quiet down and turn their gazes towards the direction of the voice. Noah slowly made his way over to them, only to receive peculiar looks from Mugging, Rentaro, Hina, Yenju, and Xiaoshi. Noah stopped and asked suspiciously. Why are you looking at me like that? Hearing that, Mugging and his group exchanged glances before looking at Noah again. Brother, Hina said softly. You didn't go back to the hotel yesterday. Noah's expression froze. Only then did Noah realize a very serious problem. Mugging and his group all knew that every night, Noah would go to the sage residence to meet the sage child. However, last night, Noah did not return to the hotel at all. In this situation, as long as one's EQ was not shockingly low, they would most likely understand what was going on. Therefore, Noah's expression became extremely unnatural. Looking at Noah's extremely unnatural expression, everyone seemed to have confirmed their guesses, and their expressions changed one by one. I didn't expect our president to be such a beast. Mugging mocked with a fake smile. Brother, did you betray me in the end? Hina had a sad expression. As expected of the president, you actually hooked up with the sage child. Yenju said vulgar words that normal girls and children would not say. I misjudged you, President. Xiaoshi had a look of reproach. Under the situation where all the girls were complaining, only Rentaro could not help but give Noah a thumbs up. However, this thumbs up attracted the hatred of all the girls. Mugging, Hina, Yenju, and Xiaoshi all looked at Rentaro with murderous gazes. Rentaro's body trembled and he unwillingly withdrew his thumbs. He looked up at the sky with an expression that said, I don't know anything. What a disloyal bastard, Noah cursed in his heart and then laughed dryly. Well, I had some things to do last night, oh. Mugging narrowed his eyes. Some things to do, some things to do. Hina, Yenju, and Xiaoshi also narrowed their eyes and stared at Noah as if they were looking at a criminal. Being stared at by a group of girls, the corners of Noah's mouth twitched. Stare. The girls continued to stare at Noah. This time, even Noah felt a lot of pressure. In the end, Noah could only surrender and say, look at me. I say, why are you looking at me like this? What are you planning to do? Humph. The girls snorted arrogantly and turned their heads away, ignoring Noah completely. All right. Mugging immediately turned around and spoke to all the police officers from Fairy Tale. Our president has arrived. Everyone, let's board the plane. Yes. All the police officers responded in unison. Then, they split up and boarded the military helicopters in an orderly manner. Hina, Xiaoshi, Yenju, Mugging said. We'll go as well. Okay. Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju nodded in unison without any objections. Then, the four girls did not even look at Noah as they walked toward a helicopter not far away. Noah was speechless as he watched the four girls walk away as if there was no one else around. Ryutaro didn't leave. He remained where he was and patted Noah's shoulder with emotion as he said this. It's okay, I'll stay with you. You? Noah glanced at Ryutaro and sighed. Without saying anything, he walked away. Ryutaro was stunned. When he finally came to his senses, Ryutaro felt like his lungs were about to explode. I'm staying with you out of the kindness of my heart. Why are you reacting like that? Amidst the commotion, the police officers from Fairy Tale all boarded the military helicopters. Then, the propellers of the military helicopters began to spin rapidly, creating a strong gust of wind as they flew into the distance. Chapter 2172. Fairyland was located not far from the Tokyo area. After all, Noah had lived in Tokyo before, and the location he chose to build Fairyland would not be too far away. At the very least, if the people of Fairyland wanted to go to Tokyo, they could go back and forth several times in a day. Of course, that was if they took a plane. Noah and his party took a military helicopter. Therefore, after about 3 hours, the bustling fortress city slowly appeared before everyone's eyes in the cabin. Through the helicopter's window, Noah, who saw fairyland from above, once again recognized the prosperity of the city. The towering city wall made of rhenium metal surrounded the entire city, leaving only a huge city gate at the front of the city. Inside the city, there were many tall buildings, like a steel hedgehog. And at the very center of the city, a towering building that looked as if it could reach the clouds stood there. Looking at the unbelievable city, even Noah was a little doubtful about how the city was built in just 3 short years. With that in mind, Noah suddenly spoke. There should be teaching facilities in fairyland, right? Noah's words left Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yenju, and Rentaro slightly startled. Of course there is. Mugging replied with some doubt. Normally, the cursed child is only around 10 years old, and the oldest is no more than 14 years old. Children at this age should be obedient in school, so they have to focus on education. Isn't this the philosophy that you left behind? That's true. Noah shook his head with a smile, and could not help feeling a little melancholy. 3 years ago, when we were in Tokyo, there were only 1 or 2 teaching facilities in the guild, but now there should be a lot, right? According to recent statistics, there are a total of 1,325 teaching facilities that are still in operation, Xiaoshi said. After all, the cursed children are all at the age where they should go to school, and fairyland gathers the cursed children from all over the world. Depending on the situation, there should be more construction in the future. Would you like to take a look at the school, Guildmaster? Yenju raised her hand excitedly. Then do you want to go to my school to take a look? Your school? Noah asked in surprise. Are you in school? Because going to school is very interesting, Yenju said matter-of-factly. Although I rarely have the chance to go to school because I have to travel all over the world with Rintaro, I've always cherished my time in school. Of the 3 of us, only Yenju still insists on going to school, Tina explained. Because I've always been sleepy during the day, and because I'm usually busy with my tasks, I gave up. Miss Xiaoshi needs to assist Miss Mugging, so she also doesn't go to school. But with Miss Xiaoshi's knowledge, she should have long surpassed the level of a university. He was indeed worthy of being called a think tank. At the age of 13, he had already finished all the university courses. He was even more of a straight-A student than a straight-A student. How is it? Does guild leader want to visit my school? Yenju asked expectantly. I can introduce you to my friends. Yenju's friend. Noah couldn't help but ponder for a moment before smiling. Let's go to Yenju's school first. Yenju's school was not very far from the office building of Fairy Tale. After alighting from the helicopter, Noah, Rintaro, Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju went straight to the school. Of course, as the guild leader of Fairyland, Noah was immediately surrounded by all the children as soon as he entered the school. Guild leader. Guild leader. Guild leader, guild leader. Guild leader, guild leader, guild leader. The children surrounded Noah one by one, jumping up and down and shouting non-stop, which made Noah laugh bitterly. You guys. Yenju stepped forward and separated everyone. She stood in front of Noah with her hands on her hips, looking very arrogant. Don't harass the guild leader. Can't you see that the guild leader is troubled? Yenju's words immediately attracted the protests of the children. Undoubtedly, Yenju-chan wants to monopolize the guild leader. That's right. What's wrong with sharing some with us? Stingy. I'm not stingy. Yenju said fiercely. I brought the guild leader here to have fun. If the guild leader is scared away by you and never comes back, what should we do? However, the group of children did not pay any attention to Yenju and spoke one after another. The guild leader never comes here in the first place. It's rare for him to come here. I don't even know if he'll come again. Yenju must want to monopolize the guild leader. She'll definitely make the guild leader hate her. How can the guild leader hate me? Yenju exploded. I'm different from you. Let me tell you, not only was I taught by the guild leader in school, but the guild leader also told me stories. Stories? All the children were stunned for a moment. Then, they showed an interested expression and shouted at Noah. Guild leader, guild leader. Tell us a story too. Yeah. We want to hear stories. The group of children ignored Yenju and pushed the screaming Yenju out of the crowd. Once again, they surrounded Noah and jumped up and down, shouting. Looking at the children around him, looking at the curiosity in their scarlet eyes, Noah was silent for a while, then smiled. Do you know why our guild is called Fairy Tale? This sentence caused the group of children to look at each other in dismay. Then, they revealed curious expressions and started to clamor again. Why? 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 Why is the guild called Fairy Tale? Amidst the excited and curious voices of the children, Noah smiled. Actually, whether fairies have tails or even exist, no one knows. Noah touched the head of the child closest to him. Even I don't know. Hearing this, the group of children was instantly shocked. In the hearts of these children, Noah was the greatest person, and no one could compare. Without Noah, Fairyland would not exist. Without Fairyland, the cursed children would all be treated inhumanely. It was all thanks to Noah that they could have the life they had now. Therefore, in the hearts of the children, Noah had long been omnipotent. Now, Noah actually said such a thing, which naturally surprised the children. Even the guild master doesn't know if fairies have tails. Doesn't that mean that fairies are more powerful than the guild master? Has the guild master never seen a fairy before? Haven't you? Under the barrage of questions from the group of children, Noah smiled without saying a word. Instead of answering, he only said this sentence. Does anyone want to know if fairies have tails? Yes. The children answered in unison without hesitation. If that's the case, then go look for it yourselves. Noah suddenly smiled. When you find fairies and solve the riddle that even I couldn't solve, then all of you will become more powerful than me. But no matter what, all of you must remember one thing. No matter where you go, no matter what difficulties you encounter, you must never give up hope. As long as you believe in hope, fairies will appear by your side. And Fairyland will always be your home. Noah's words made the children's eyes light up one after another, flashing with a dazzling brilliance. They believed that those words would become an indelible brand, engraved in the depths of the children's hearts. No matter what happened in the future, these children would always carry such a dream in their hearts. That was to chase fairies, to chase hope. As long as they could accomplish that, then they could surpass the idols that everyone worshipped and looked forward to. When that time comes, whether fairies have tails or not would no longer matter. Because these children would surely discover it, right? The fairies that could protect them would always be by their side. And that was Fairyland. In the direction of the door, Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yenju, and Ryutaro all showed a warm smile when they saw this. Chapter 2173. After spending the whole morning in Yenju's school, Noah slowly left amidst the reluctant farewells of the children. However, Noah did not directly return to Fairy Tale. Instead, as if something had piqued his interest, he began to wander around the entire fairy town accompanied by Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yenju, and Rentaro. Sometimes, he would tour around some very creative buildings. Sometimes, he would wander around some very meaningful places. Sometimes, he would ride in a limousine on the roads. Sometimes, he would play with children on the side of the road. Thus, Noah would sometimes walk and sometimes use transportation, aimlessly heading to one place after another. It was as if he wanted to visit the entirety of fairyland and get to know everyone, going to and fro without getting tired of it, enjoying himself immensely. When he was hungry, he would talk to the owners of the stalls and ask them to give him some food to fill his stomach. When he was thirsty, he would find a place and ask for some drinks from others. When he was in the mood, he would help out with the household chores. When his hands were itchy, he would fight with some policemen in the gym and training ground, and they were evenly matched. On this day, Noah seemed to have completely become a tourist and a child, either running around or being willful and playful. These performances made Mugging and the others who had been accompanying Noah dumbfounded. After all, in the eyes of Mugging and the others, although Noah was easy to talk to, once he encountered a problem, his performance was better than anyone else. 3 years ago, without any power or influence, Noah was able to force the celestial Tong family to step down by himself. Not long ago, when faced with difficulties from countries all over the world, Noah was also able to turn misfortune into blessings. Not only did he not give the countries all over the world a chance to make trouble, he even turned the tables and made all the countries suffer. In addition, he once single-handedly took care of the Stage V protozoa, annihilating an army of thousands of protozoa with one move. Even a large number of mechanical soldiers of the Wuxiang Association were cleanly defeated. He had unimaginable power. These deeds made everyone clearly aware. Undoubtedly, they recognized Noah's ability. Powerful. Mysterious. Excellent. Tyrannical. These people were the leader of fairy tale in the eyes of the world Noah Dole. Even Mugging and the others saw Noah in this way. But today, Noah overturned everyone's impression of him. Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rintaro were all very surprised to see this. However, no one said anything about this. That was because they all knew why Noah was acting like this. And so, Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rintaro accompanied Noah the entire time. They didn't urge Noah to return to fairy tale. In fact, they even put down all of their burdens to play with Noah. They played until the evening. Even Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rintaro were exhausted after playing for an entire afternoon. Apart from exhaustion, everyone also felt a sense of novelty. It was as if their mood had suddenly become cheerful, or as if all the depression in their hearts had been vented. They felt very happy. As a high-ranking member of fairy tale, other than Yanzhu who would occasionally enjoy the life of a child, how could the rest of them have any form of entertainment on a daily basis? But today, while playing with Noah, the group went to many places. There was a skating rink. There was an amusement park. There was a gymnasium. There was a zoo. There was everything, and they played with many of the entertainment facilities in Fairyland. It was as if all of their entertainment time had been concentrated on today. The group really had a lot of fun. If it was any other place, they definitely wouldn't be able to have so much fun, right? After all, in Fairyland, they were all famous people, not much different from popular idols. Once they went out on the streets, they would definitely be surrounded. However, in Fairyland, the people who surrounded Noah's group were all children. Therefore, Noah's group was naturally happy to play with the children. They played with the children almost everywhere they went, and it felt like they were having fun with the people. It was not until the evening that the unrestrained fun finally came to an end. However, the group still did not return to Fairy Tale. This time, however, it was not Noah who wanted to play around on a whim. Instead, Mugging and the others pulled Noah into a KTV and had a gathering. Cheers! Inside a KTV suite, Noah, Muggino, Rintaro, Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yanzhu all raised the glasses in their hands and clinked them in unison, causing the crisp sound to echo throughout the room. At the same time, a joyous atmosphere filled the air, causing everyone's faces to be filled with smiles. Then, the group chose to drink the drinks in their hands at the same time. Phew! Yenju exclaimed happily. So comfortable. After running around all day, I finally have something to drink. Hina also had a comfortable expression. I've been thirsty for a long time. The drinks in this shop are all sold in direct cooperation with famous manufacturers, so there's a fresh feeling in there. Xiaoshi showed off his genius halo. I heard that the drinks here are much better than other places, and it's a favorite of the young people. Is that so? Yenju's eyes lit up, and she spoke without hesitation. I want a drink. No. Ryutaru retorted with a single sentence. Minors are not allowed to drink. Sigh. Yenju sighed in dissatisfaction. How can you do that? Riki-kun is right. Mugging agreed. You're not old enough to drink yet, so you're not allowed to drink. Hearing that, not only did Yenju lower her head dejectedly, but even Hina and Xiaoshi, who were eager to try, were disappointed. Although the three children had different personalities, as children, their curiosity was particularly strong. Especially when it came to things like alcohol. Everyone knew that only adults could drink, so most children would want to try it out of curiosity. However, alcohol was not a good thing for children. Thus, Noah also threatened. If you three girls dare to drink secretly, you'll get ulcers on your mouth. Ulcers? Hina and Yenju immediately covered their mouths. Liar, Xiaoshi said calmly. Alcohol doesn't cause ulcers, and even if it does, it should be in the stomach, not the mouth, right? That's not necessarily the case. Noah smiled as if it was true. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Seeing Noah's meaningful smile, Xiaoshi hesitated. Could it be that the knowledge he learned was wrong? Alright, stop scaring my Xiaoshi. Mugging rolled her eyes at Noah. No matter how smart she is, she's still just a child. Do you want her to be so conflicted that she can't sleep at night? Under normal circumstances, someone who can't sleep because of conflict shouldn't appear in a child, Ryutaru said bluntly. If she really is a child, then she'll sleep more happily than anyone else. Ryutaru's words caused 3 feet to stomp on him, causing him to cry out in pain. Humph. Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju harumphed coldly, leaving Ryutaru with the back of their heads, so he didn't dare to say anything. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but feel a little amused. Mugging sat next to Noah. Looking at Noah's face, Mugging spoke in a low voice. Now, you can relax a little, right? Don't worry. Noah was stunned. I know that you must be planning to do something extremely important. Otherwise, you wouldn't have shown such an expression in the hotel, and you wouldn't have acted so strangely today, Mugging said, looking straight into Noah's eyes. I just want to tell you that no matter what you're planning to do, don't forget that the reason all the residents of Fairyland are laughing like they are today is because of you. Including me, that's the same. Mugging showed a beautiful smile. So, you must remember to come back. Mugging's words made Noah smile. Of course. Chapter 2174. Finally, night came to Fairyland. In the heart of the bustling city, the tallest building in the world flickered with lights, illuminating the area around it. And on the top floor of the tower-like building, there was an office. That office was an office that only the ruler with the highest position in the entire Fairyland could have. Click! Amidst a soft sound, a person opened the door outside the vast and luxurious office and walked in. Is this the place? Noah looked around the office and sighed from the bottom of his heart. I can't believe this is mine. The size of the office alone was enough to be used as a basketball court. The floor was covered with a luxurious red carpet. The furnishings and decorations around the room also displayed an extraordinary sense of nobility. The deepest part of the office was not a wall, but a glass window that replaced a wall. No matter how one looked at it, this was a place that only the rich could have. In fact, the owner of this office was indeed a rich person. With Fairyland's current economic ability, it would not be an exaggeration to call it the richest country in the world. After all, Fairyland earned the world's money. Just like Eulalie in the world of seeking a chance encounter in the underground city, the world's wealth flowed here, and it was impossible not to be rich. It was just that Eulalie used selling magic stone products as a means of earning money, while Fairyland earned the world's wealth by accepting commissions. The system 3 years ago was the same as 3 years ago. 70% of the wealth would be taken by the police who carried out the missions, while the remaining 30% would be used by the guild for the construction and operation of the guild and the city. As Fairyland's construction became more comprehensive, various other means of earning money appeared in the city. Today, it only needed taxes to sustain itself, and no longer needed the guild to fund its operations. Naturally, with that, the guild became richer, causing the city to become more prosperous. That was why it was not unreasonable for Fairyland to be built to such a prosperous state in 3 short years. As for the wealth earned by Fairy Tale, apart from the portion that needed to be used for the guild's operations, the rest were all recorded under Noah's name. Unknowingly, I've become the richest man in the world. Noah couldn't help but laugh. He slowly walked into the office and closed the door. Then, Noah walked back and forth in the office at a speed that was too slow for ordinary people. His hands touched the furniture and items in the office, and even the wall-like glass was touched inch by inch. Finally, Noah sat in front of the overly luxurious desk, overlooking the entire luxurious office, leaned against the comfortable leather chair, and closed his eyes. After a while, Noah raised his hand, and the dark gold gift card flashed in his hand. Clang! In a flash of light, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith appeared. Master. Aster didn't expect that Noah would suddenly summon him. He was slightly startled. It wasn't just Aster. Even Orpheus and Lilith blinked their eyes in confusion. It was as if they couldn't react at all. Only Athena's pair of bewitching snake eyes flashed. She looked at Noah as if she could see through Noah's thoughts. Then, Athena spoke. You want us to stay? This sentence changed the atmosphere of the entire office. Noah was silent, and then he smiled bitterly. As expected, I can't hide anything from you. As expected of the goddess of wisdom. In other words, Noah acknowledged Athena's words. Master. Aster's pair of purple eyes stared at Noah. Her usually emotionless face changed a little. You don't want us anymore. Although Aster's voice didn't carry much emotion, there was a sense of shock, grievance, and sorrow in it. Even Orpheus and Lilith stared straight at Noah. Their expressions didn't change as usual, but there were ripples in their eyes. Without a doubt, Noah's actions were a huge blow to the group of young ladies. Noah's bitter smile deepened. He got up from his seat, walked around the desk, and squatted in front of the group of young ladies. Is this your first day knowing me? Noah extended his hand and patted Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith's heads. His tone was unusually gentle. How can I not want you? Hearing this, the wavering in Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith's eyes slowly calmed down. However, Noah immediately said so. But, I do have the intention of letting you stay for the time being. Stay for the time being. Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith were stunned. Under such circumstances, before Noah could explain, Athena spoke. Because, even if we stay by your side, we won't be of any help, right? Athena said indifferently. The battlefield this time is in the space between worlds and not the individual worlds. Only you can enter the space that contains thousands of worlds. Others can only use you as a medium, or else they won't be able to travel to other worlds. That was the truth of the matter. In the final battle, Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith couldn't help at all. This wasn't a matter of strength, but a more fundamental problem. Other than Noah, other life forms couldn't enter the space between worlds. Even Gaia and Alea were only able to enter the space between worlds because they were chosen by the thousands of worlds to be Noah's guides. Furthermore, with the help of the imaginative power, they were able to successfully leave their original worlds and enter the space between worlds. Moreover, this entry was only temporary and couldn't be maintained for long. In this case, if they couldn't even enter the battlefield, how could Aster, Athena, Orpheus, Lilith, and the other young ladies be of any help? Even if Noah could bring the girls into the space between worlds, he couldn't bring them directly into the space between worlds. Therefore, Noah wanted the girls to stay in this world. Rather than watching anxiously from the side, why not do something within my power? Noah's gaze turned to the girls one by one. This world is still in a state of unrest. Even if I solve the problems on the surface, there will still be many things happening in the dark. And regardless of whether I win or lose in the space between worlds, a month will pass in this world. Noah said to the girls. If I lose, after a month, this world will completely collapse and perish. If I win, I will have to wait a month before I can return. I don't want something terrible to have happened here when I return. Noah smiled slightly. So, I hope that you can stay and help me protect this fairyland that carries the happiness and dreams of all children. The group of girls immediately fell silent. No one would be willing to just watch and not be able to help at all. If Noah brought the girls with him, they could only hide in the space between gifts and watch Noah face danger. That kind of helplessness, just thinking about it would make them despair. Because of that, Noah wanted the girls to stay here. If I win in the end, then we will only be apart for a month. If I lose in the end, after a month, I won't be alone. All of you will follow me. Noah raised his eyes and looked at the girls. I know it's unfair, but I still want to say this. Even if it's for all of you, I won't lose. Give your lives to me to protect. What else could the group of girls say when they heard those words that were spoken so casually and sincerely? Without any hesitation, Aster stepped forward and squeezed herself into Noah's arms. Orpheus and Lilith immediately followed suit and squeezed themselves into Noah's arms. Even Athena's eyes flickered a few times before she finally sighed and snuggled into Noah's arms. Hugging the four petite girls and feeling their warmth, Noah reached out and hugged the girls tightly. Everything was said without words. Chapter 2175. Between the Worlds. The origin space of the world that gave birth to everything. As if it could contain everything, this space was pure white as far as the eye could see. Even at this moment, there was a group of extremely aggressive red that was constantly attacking this space and even occupied half of this space. Only a layer of dazzling light was left to protect the bottom. This space was still emitting a motherly aura that could contain everything, making one's heart calm. Pieces of feathers floated in the air. Waves of silence filled the space. A pure white stone plate was suspended in the air surrounded by feathers. It was surrounded by mysterious characters that were also pure white in color. It was very eye-catching. Gaia and Alea guarded the left and right of the stone plate with their eyes closed. Their bodies also floated slightly as if they were weightless. It was an indescribable dreamy feeling. This scene lasted for who knows how long. When, at a certain moment, the feathers that were drifting aimlessly in the surroundings suddenly trembled, as if they were happy little birds, suddenly becoming lively. Almost at the same time, Gaia and Alea opened their eyes. They're back. Looks like they're back. While muttering to themselves, Gaia and Alea raised their eyes at the same time and looked forward. The space was completely silent. However, the feathers were quite lively. It was as if they had all been activated and were flying back and forth happily. Under such circumstances, one of the feathers bloomed with dazzling light. Clang! Along with the pure white holy light shining, a burst of light particles floated out of the feather and gradually condensed into a human shape. Phew! Noah let out a sigh of relief and slowly opened his eyes. The feathers immediately surrounded Noah and circled around him like a parent welcoming their child home. Waves of warm feelings fluctuated. Feeling the waves of warm emotions, Noah's expression couldn't help but soften. Then, he met Gaia and Alea's gaze and said softly, "I'm back." Gaia and Alea nodded and tacitly moved aside, exposing the stone plate floating in the air to Noah's eyes. "Huh?" Noah was a little surprised. When the pure white stone plate entered Noah's vision, Noah suddenly had a strange feeling. The strange feeling made Noah tilt his head and look at Gaia and Alea with a doubtful gaze. Then, he spoke in an uncertain tone. "Gaia, Alea, don't you feel that my authority, sovereignty, and favor seem to have changed?" Hearing this, Gaia and Alea looked at each other and suddenly smiled. "Different?" Gaia asked mischievously. "What's different?" "I don't know how to say." Noah scratched his cheeks. His face was full of confusion. After hesitating for a long time, he said this. "In the past, because my authority, sovereignty, and favor were all related to my strength, I could always feel the connection between them. But now, although I can still feel the connection, it feels like an illusion that I can't touch at all." This feeling was the same as people looking up at the sun. When people looked up at the sun, they could always see it hanging in the sky and never disappearing. As long as there were no weather reasons, they could see it every day. However, in fact, even if people could see the sun every day, they absolutely couldn't touch it. Because even if it could be seen with the naked eye, it was at least 140 million kilometers away from Earth. In addition, the sun was so scorching. Even if one could really touch it, they would be burned to ashes in an instant. The distance between humans and the sun seemed very close, but in fact, it was almost impossible for them to touch each other. Noah felt like this now. Undoubtedly, the connection between authority, sovereignty, and favor still existed, but Noah had an illusion that it was unreachable. However, Gaia and Alea seemed to have expected this. "Your authority, sovereignty, and favor have completely transformed," Alea said. "Now, they are no longer the authority of God, the sovereignty of the sun, and the favor of God, but the authority of the world, the sovereignty of the world, and the favor of the world. For example, if you obtain authority from a god, authority is a power that originates from a god," Gaia explained. "But now, you intend to seize authority from the world. The power of authority originates from the world, so of course it's impossible to achieve." Therefore, Noah had the illusion that it was unreachable. In the world of God slayers, humans could take the power of God by killing God and become God slayers. Now, Noah's authority had transformed into the power of the world. To obtain this power, it was equivalent to killing the world and taking the power of the world. This didn't sound like something that could be done, right? The most fundamental problem was how to kill the world. In other words, the power of the world is something that humans and all other life forms cannot bear, Gaia continued. Apart from you, who is the reincarnation of a world fragment, no other life form can accept this power. The same goes for sovereignty and favor, Alea said. The sovereignty of the sun is the power to control the sun, while the sovereignty of the world is the power to control the world. The favor of God is the power that God gives to humans, while the favor of the world is the power that the world gives to humans. These powers have all evolved, Alea looked at Noah. Apart from you, no one can fuse them into their bodies. Hearing this, Noah turned his gaze and stared at the pure white stone plate. Wang, the pure white stone plate seemed to be able to sense the presence of its owner, and a misty light flowed through it. It was abnormally beautiful. "Okay, little Noah," Gaia said. "It's time for you to take back everything that belongs to you. Accept them and fuse them into your body like before. Not only will you obtain power equivalent to a world, but your own infinite possibilities that can rival a world will also be triggered and you will undergo a complete transformation," Alea said solemnly. "At that time, you will be the strongest, and you will have the ticket to the final battle." Gaia and Alea's words made Noah's gaze on the stone plate change. It became complicated and complicated. Noah knew that as long as he walked forward and fused the power that countless people yearned for but could not obtain into his body, he would obtain a terrifying power that even God could not touch. However, at the same time, Noah would have to carry out the only mission that he was born with. Whether the final result would be good or bad, it would not be up to the heavens to decide. After all, the heavens were just a part of the world. As for Noah, he had to save millions of worlds and lives. Noah had to rely on himself to fight for everything. Give it his all. With that thought in mind, Noah looked up and spoke abruptly to Gaia and Alea. "Before that, I want to return home." "Home?" Gaia and Alea were stunned. "Don't worry, I won't stay for long. I have no regrets," Noah smiled. "So, before the final battle, I want to see my family, my grandfather, and my wife." Gaia and Alea glanced at each other. Gaia and Alea looked at Noah at the same time after glancing at the dazzling barrier that had been resisting the densely packed Red Reapers in midair. One day, Gaia raised a finger with an unprecedentedly serious expression. "You only have one day. If you don't return within a day, we are worried that the barrier will give way before you finish fusing all the power and draw out all the possibilities." Alea stared at Noah and said. "So, one day is the limit, no matter which world it is in." "I know," Noah nodded heavily. "One day's time is enough." After that, Noah turned around and waved his hand. A feather flew to him and he tapped it with his finger. At the next moment, Noah vanished on the spot. Gaia and Alea looked at where Noah vanished and prayed in their hearts. They hoped that at the very end, the child could eliminate all his worries and advance fearlessly. Chapter 2176. In the boundless sky, the wind whistled past, taking away the white clouds one by one. The sun reappeared behind the drifting clouds, shedding golden light that illuminated the land, the mountains, and the town called Magnolia. At a certain moment, in a corner of the sky, the space suddenly trembled, causing the atmosphere to become chaotic. A figure flashed out of the void and suddenly appeared in the trembling space, bathing in the sunlight. "I'm back." With this soft murmur, Noah lowered his head and looked at the town below. Magnolia was as prosperous as ever, without the slightest change. Looking down at the pedestrians coming and going on the streets of Magnolia, Noah's heart seemed to be touched. He stared at them in a daze, and for a moment, he didn't have any other reaction. This was because the town called Magnolia was the place where Noah grew up. For this world, Magnolia was just a very inconspicuous small town. For the between the worlds, that contained thousands of worlds, Magnolia was no different from a grain of sand on the beach. However, for Noah, who was reincarnated from a fragment of the original world and was born from thousands of worlds, Magnolia was his real hometown. Without it, there would be no Noah today. Looking at the hometown that grew up with him, Noah took a deep breath, suppressed the many complicated emotions in his heart, and then turned his head and looked in one direction of Magnolia. Swoosh! In the next second, Noah's figure suddenly moved, turned into a stream of light, and swept down toward Magnolia below. In a corner of Magnolia, there was a mansion that was neither luxurious nor simple. Noah descended from the sky like a meteor streaking across the sky, bringing along a whistling wind as he landed in front of the mansion's door. Looking up at the mansion in front of him, Noah couldn't help but curl up his lips into a smile. If it was said that Noah's residences in the other worlds were only temporary residences, then this was Noah's real home. Thus, Noah stepped forward, slowly raised his hand, and knocked on the door. The knocking sound had just sounded when a soft voice sounded from within the mansion. "Coming." Just then, a series of footsteps came from afar and came to the door, opening it. The person who appeared at the door was a charming and adorable girl. Lisanna was about to greet her, but when she saw the full appearance of the person standing at the door, she was immediately stunned. Looking at the stunned expression on her face, Noah's emotions suddenly swelled. Driven by strong emotions, Noah did something rash without any consideration for the first time. "Aw!" Lisa suddenly cried out, and before she could react, she was pulled into Noah's embrace. "Ugh!" A whimper sounded, and Lisana's seductive lips were immediately captured. "Ugh! Ugh!" Lisa immediately began to struggle, her small fists hammering Noah's chest a few times, as if she was panicking. However, Noah hugged her even tighter, and as she panicked, he easily captured his wife's tongue in his arms and savored it. "Ugh!" Lisa immediately let out a weak moan, her body's struggles gradually subsiding, and she passively accepted Noah's domineering kiss. This kiss lasted for who knew how long. It was only when Lisa began to feel a little suffocated that Noah gently released her, allowing the flushed Lisa to finally be released, and she began to gasp for breath. The two pairs of eyes looked at each other, one filled with warmth, the other with tears. After a while, she punched Noah hard and grumbled coquettishly. "Big brother Noah, you're so naughty. You treat me like this the moment you come back. Can't help it." Noah hugged her slender waist, his gaze fixed on her face as he said this. "I missed you." His words melted Lisana's heart. She immediately hugged Noah back, snuggling into Noah's embrace, her voice full of attachment and happiness. "I missed you too, big brother Noah." Noah smiled, closed his eyes, and rested his chin on Lisana's head, enjoying the joy and tranquility of their reunion. After an unknown amount of time, another sweet voice woke up the couple who were hugging each other tightly. "All right, come in, don't stay at the door." Hearing this voice, Noah and Lisa woke up at the same time. They opened their eyes, turned their heads, and looked at the entrance. There, dressed in a pure white princess dress, as if she was wearing a wedding dress, met Noah's gaze, and said this with a perfect and gentle smile. "Welcome back, Noah." Noah nodded and returned a smile. "I'm back, Mila." After speaking, Noah didn't seem to want to play favorites. He stepped forward, pulled Mila into his arms, and raised the beautiful girl's face in his arms. "Wait. Wait." Mila seemed to know what Noah wanted to do. Her face turned red, and she spoke in a panic. Don't do it here." Before she could finish her sentence, Myra's voice turned into a whimper. The domineering kiss caused the supermodel to fall completely, and she couldn't speak anymore. She could only close her eyes shyly and let her unreasonable husband do whatever he wanted. This made Lisa, who was watching from the side, feel a little embarrassed. At the same time, Lisa also felt that something was amiss. "It feels like Big brother Noah doesn't seem quite right." The joy of reunion came quickly, but it also left quickly. After all, in the time that Mila and Lisa felt, Noah had only been away for a month. Even if they missed him, it wasn't to the point where they wanted to die. After Noah vented his longing and feelings, the three of them returned home. During this process, Noah held the sisters' hands and chatted with Mila and Lisa about some trivial things. Those were all very ordinary things that couldn't be more ordinary. As for what Noah had experienced in the past month, he didn't mention a word. Mila and Lisa were naturally happy to be with Noah. Even if they were just chatting about trivial things, they were still happy. However, the sisters had some doubts in their hearts. As the people who shared Noah's bed, both Mila and Lisa could clearly sense that Noah seemed to be hiding something very heavy. Even though Noah didn't say anything and behaved the same as before, Mira and Lisa could clearly sense that something was amiss. However, the sisters were very considerate and didn't mention anything. They just chatted with Noah and snuggled up to him on both sides, hoping to give Noah some peace and quiet. So, Mila and Lisa also didn't talk about anything important. They only chatted with Noah about some of the housework they had done in the past month, some of the miscellaneous matters in the guild, and the jokes that their companions had made. Noah listened to all of these topics very seriously. From time to time, he couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't get tired of it. Time continued to pass. Noah, Mila, and Lisanna chatted on the sofa in the hall, letting a faint warmth permeate the air. They chatted all the way until noon. It was only when it was almost noon that Mira noticed the time. "Hungry?" Mila asked Noah. "I'll go cook for you." "I'll go too," Lisanna hurriedly said. "Big brother Noah must be tired. We have to make a good meal for him." With that said, the sisters were about to get up. However, Noah held his two wives' hands, shook his head, and said, "Don't worry about it. Let's go eat in the guild." The guild? Mila and Lisanna were slightly stunned. In response, Noah only smiled. "I kind of want to see Grandpa and my companions." Hearing that, Mila and Lisanna looked at each other and gave Noah a considerate smile and nodded. And so, the three of them left together and headed in the direction of the guild. Chapter 2177. After a month, the changes in the guild were actually not small. At least, compared to before the Great Demonic Martial Arts Exhibition, there were a lot of changes. Unlike the coldness before the Great Demonic Martial Arts Exhibition, today's fairy tale once again took back the title of the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, and its strength was even greater than 7 years ago. This was because everyone in the Kingdom of Fiori knew that in fairy tale, there was a Grand Magus ranked first. He was known as one of the 10 Grand Magi, and was known as the strongest Grand Magus. One of the 10 great Saint Magi had single-handedly driven away 10,000 dragons. This Saint Magician had single-handedly annihilated the Black Dragon in the Tacit Revelation. Just these two achievements were enough to make all the magic shooters in the continent look up to him. Coupled with the fact that he was a true hero who saved the country, Noah's reputation naturally made fairy tale rise along with him. They became more and more famous, and attracted more and more commissions and members. However, the increase in members did not affect the atmosphere of fairy tale. Therefore, this guild was still as lively and warm as before. It was noisy enough to make everyone roar in dissatisfaction, but they did not feel disgusted from the bottom of their hearts. At least, when Noah returned to the guild, his companions in front of him did not even notice him. "I've been unhappy with you for a long time. Droop your eyes." I should be the one saying that. Hang your eyes. In the middle of the guild hall, Naz and Gray were quarreling as usual, with a large group of members cheering them on. They were having a lot of fun. Come, sister will teach you how to drink. I guarantee that after you drink this glass of wine, your skin will become more tender than sister's." "No. That's not a glass of wine. It's a barrel of wine. And I've never heard of drinking wine being able to make skin better." In front of a table in the guild, Kana was pestering Lucy with a flushed face, making Lucy want to cry but have no tears. "I think that compared to fists, swords are more lethal." "That's not right. Compared to swords, fists are indeed more powerful. There is no man in this world who doesn't use fists to fight." In front of the guild's bar, Alusha and Elfman were discussing a strange problem. "Lady Wendy is only 14 years old, right? Is it really okay to start working at such a young age?" I'm actually not young. Undoubtedly, Sister Xuanai still calls me Lord." In a corner of the guild, Xuanai and Wendy were chatting. One had a worried expression while the other had tears in her eyes. Aside from the people Noah was familiar with, everyone else was busy with their own matters in the guild. Makarov and Laxus sat in front of the counter. They were drinking. The trio from Thunder God's Council was gathered not far away from Laxus. They seemed to be chatting about something. She sat there quietly, reading a book. Gadula hid in a shadowy corner, gnawing at a horseshoe. Hubby, Xiao Lulu, and Lily were flying in the sky, playing some kind of game. Familiar and unfamiliar people were gathered in the guild's hall. They were either playing or chatting happily. It looked very noisy, but it was also very joyful. Noah could not help but smile at the familiar people and scenery. Mira and Lisanna held Noah's hands, one on the left and one on the right. Seeing Noah's helpless expression, they both smiled. The guild hasn't changed, Mira said with a smile. Although many new members have joined and the number of requests has increased, everyone is still the same as before. When Big Brother Noah isn't here, Sister Mira and I are in charge of the guild's affairs. If there are any big matters, Grandpa will take Big Brother's place to give orders. Lisanna was also full of smiles. Although he has announced his retirement, Grandpa is still worried about the guild. I can tell, Noah said. Then, he raised his head and looked up with a profound look in his eyes. Moreover, it wasn't just the former guild master who was worried about the guild. Even the first guild master was worried about the guild. Hearing these words, Mira and Lisanna were both stunned. Soon after, they seemed to understand something as they raised their heads and looked up. They saw Mavis sitting on a wooden beam at the top of the guild hall. She was swinging her two white little feet, humming a song while holding a cup of ice cream and happily tasting it. Seeing Mavis's cute appearance, Mira and Lisanna couldn't help but laugh. Ever since the Great Demon Battle exhibition, Mavis didn't seem to have returned to Celestial Wolf Island. She always stayed in the guild hall, appearing during the day and disappearing at night as if she was watching over her companions. Undoubtedly, Mavis was a ghost. It was said that Mavis was a ghost. It should be the other way around. However, Mavis noticed Noah's arrival. She smiled at Noah and waved her little hand in greeting. She looked very cute. At this time, the members of the guild also noticed Noah standing at the entrance. Isn't that the guild master? The guild master is back. He's finally back. One by one, the guild members shouted, attracting everyone's attention. Noah. Alusha turned her head. Noah. Lucy was pleasantly surprised. Brother. Wendy beamed with joy. Lord Noah. Snow also stood up and turned her gaze to Noah. Her eyes were filled with joy. Naz, who was fighting with Gray, suddenly had his eyes light up and pushed Gray away. You're finally back. Noah. Let's have a showdown. Naz, who was shouting, rushed in Noah's direction without any warning. However, before Naz could reach Noah, Gray seized this opening and sent him flying with a kick. Clapping his hands, Gray looked as though he had obtained the final victory and greeted Noah in satisfaction. Yo, Noah, you're back. Yes, I'm back. Noah nodded to his companions and swept his gaze across their faces. In the end, he stopped at Wendy and Snow and smiled at the two young ladies. I'm back. Welcome back, Big Brother. Wendy nodded happily. Welcome back, Lord Noah. Xuanai, on the other hand, stood there meekly and nervously, as if she didn't know what kind of reaction she should show. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the expressions of the two young girls who had a close relationship with him. He stepped forward and patted Wendy and Snow's heads respectively, causing the two young girls to become slightly shy. Then, Noah looked at Makarov and spoke softly. Grandpa, I'm back. It's good that you're back, Makarov said, his wrinkled eyes staring straight at Noah. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. Although Makarov wasn't Noah's father, he was Noah's grandfather. Even if they weren't related by blood, he was still a relative who had raised Noah since he was a child. Therefore, Makarov almost intuitively discovered Noah's abnormality. Even though Noah's behavior was no different from before, Makarov, like the Strauss sisters, could tell that Noah had something on his mind. Makarov closed his eyes and finished the wine in his cup. He then stood up from the counter and shouted to all the guild members. "Let's go. Little ones. Prepare for the banquet." Oh! All the magic shooters in the guild cheered and raised the wine cups in their hands. The joyous atmosphere suddenly filled the air. "Grandpa." Noah suddenly looked at Makarov with some astonishment. "Don't say anything." Makarov didn't turn his head and directly said such a sentence. "At least, now, you just need to enjoy the banquet to your heart's content." Hearing this, Noah was silent. Then, Noah smiled. "I know." Noah turned his head and looked at all the magic shooters in the guild and suddenly smiled. "Then let's have a banquet. It's my treat." All the magic shooters in the guild cheered even more jubilantly. "Long live the president." As expected of the president. "I'm going to start eating and drinking. Bring me wine. I want meat." Shouts resounded throughout the entire guild, causing Naz, who was sent flying by Gray's kick, to jump up from the ground and shout loudly. "And fire! Prepare fire for me." Everyone was startled by Naz's words at first, then they all burst into laughter. The unprecedentedly jubilant banquet began. Chapter 2178. The entire banquet lasted until the evening. Noah had been enjoying the banquet with the members of the guild. Some accepted Naz and Gray's challenge and directly set up the ring, killing the two in 1 or 2 moves. Some accepted Alusha and Kana's challenge and competed with the two in drinking enough wine to count with buckets. Some accepted Lax's and Elfman's challenge and competed in eating who knows how many pieces of meat. He also accepted the challenges of the other members, but what they competed in was the intimacy between couples. In front of everyone, he completely let go of Mira and Lisanna and pulled them into his embrace, fiercely kissing them like a wolf, causing the sisters to be greatly embarrassed, and his companions to make a ruckus, causing Wendy and Shwe to be endlessly envious. Such a noisy banquet lasted until the sky was almost dark, and the drunken members of the guild were supported one by one and left the guild one after another, returning to their own homes. In the end, the only people who still stayed in the guild were a group of friends that Noah was very familiar with. His friends all unanimously chose to stay in the guild, laughing and chatting, as if they had eaten too much, and couldn't stand up at all. One after another, they collapsed on the table and couldn't move anymore. Only Mira, Lisanna, Wendy, Shwenai, and the other girls could continue to busy themselves around, giving water to those who drank too much, patting the backs of those who had eaten too much, and seemed to be enjoying themselves. Looking at his friends like this, Noah suddenly spoke. "There's one thing I want to tell everyone." Hearing this, the group of friends all quieted down and looked at Noah in unison. No one had a strange or puzzled expression on their faces. Presumably, the group of friends had also discovered Noah's abnormality in the course of today's banquet. The people here were all family members who had been with Noah since he was young. Noah had something on his mind. Even Naz and Elfman, two brainless people, could tell that he had something on his mind. Therefore, no one expressed any doubts. Everyone turned their gazes to Noah and quietly waited for Noah to speak. Noah also knew that he couldn't hide it from his companions. Therefore, Noah chose to reveal everything. Thus, in the suddenly quiet guild, Noah revealed all of his secrets. It wasn't like before, where it was 70% true and 30% false. Instead, it was telling the truth. For example, the existence between the worlds. For example, his background. For example, the following battle. For example, the mission he currently had. And so on and so forth. Noah told the people present everything. Listening to Noah's narration, the magic shooters under the leadership of Makarov and Fairy Tale were first surprised, then shocked, then incredulous, and finally incredulous. After Noah finished narrating everything, everyone became silent. Perhaps this will be the last battle of my life. Noah's gaze turned to the companions around him. There are only two results in this battle. One is that I win, and the thousands of worlds will be intact and continue to reproduce. One is that I lose, and everything will be destroyed with me. No matter if it's a god or a world, they will all be destroyed, and no one will survive. And now, it's the last moment before I go to the battlefield. Noah smiled slightly. So, in this last moment, I want to see everyone, see grandfather, and see my companions. As he spoke, Noah even extended his hand to hold Mira and Lasana's hand. His gaze turned towards Wendy and Xuanai as he spoke softly. And also, to see you all that I love. Silence. Extremely oppressive silence. No one present spoke. Obviously, they were still in shock. When everyone reacted one after another, the way they looked at Noah had changed. They became very distressed. Especially Mira, Lisanna, Wendy, and Snow, the four girls. They were so distressed that they were about to cry. The girls never thought that Noah would bear such a mission. Thousands of worlds. Billions of lives. All of it, was on Noah alone, waiting for Noah to save them. No one could help Noah. No one could lend their strength. Noah had to bear all the pressure alone and fight for everything. And no one present doubted the authenticity of Noah's words. Because Noah was their family, their companion. After an unknown amount of time, suddenly, a person laughed. Now, I finally know why you're so strong, Noah. Naz grinned and raised a fist at Noah. In that case, don't worry and go. Naz? Noah was stunned on the spot. At this time, the surrounding companions also looked at each other one after another, and then they all laughed. Naz is right. Lucy's voice sounded, full of vitality. Noah, don't worry and fight, don't have any scruples. I've always believed that you're always the strongest. Alusha smiled sweetly. Since young, you've never let me down. This time, you can definitely do it. The guild has been saved many times because of you. Gray looked at Noah and also smiled. So, you have to believe in yourself. You can definitely get through this difficult time. I also believe in brother. Wendy held Noah's arm tightly, and her eyes were surprisingly firm. If it's brother, then no matter what kind of existence the opponent is, he can win. Lord Noah won't lose to anyone. Snow nodded heavily. Even if it's evil that can destroy all the worlds, it will definitely be defeated by Lord Noah. If you're a man, then you shouldn't lose any battle. Elfman patted the muscles on his arm. Noah, you're definitely a man. Go and fight. Kana threw a flirtatious glance at Noah. I'll help you prepare the wine to welcome your victory. Good luck. Even Ruby raised her hand. Noah, you can do it. Even Laxus, Fred, Bixro, and Alba, Jerlin, and the others looked at Noah. Although they didn't say anything, there wasn't a trace of worry on their faces. Instead, there was only trust. Seeing the sincere smiles on his companions' faces, Noah only felt his heart tremble. Makarov, who was also looking at this scene, smiled and walked up to Noah. I remember the first time I saw you. It was in a forest filled with magical creatures. Makarov looked straight at Noah. At that time, when I saw you, I had a very strange feeling. It was as if you were the only person in the world who had been abandoned. You didn't even have a piece of clothing. It was very lonely. After that, you were attacked by magical creatures. When I wanted to save you, you burst out with terrifying mana and defeated all the magical creatures with the impact of your mana. Makarov sighed. When I saw this scene, I knew that you would definitely become an incredible person in the future. And when this thought appeared in my mind, I told myself that I definitely couldn't leave you alone. Otherwise, you would very likely go astray in the future and become the second terrifying dark magic shooter after Jerf. Makarov spoke his mind for the first time. Because of this, I decided to adopt you. At that time, I completely didn't expect that you would be even more outstanding than I expected. Makarov smiled. Now, I'm extremely glad that I adopted you because the one who is about to save millions of worlds and billions of lives is none other than my grandson. I'm very proud, very proud. Makarov patted Noah's shoulder. So, you don't have to feel burdened. Fight with all your might. If you win, Grandpa will continue to host banquets for you. If you lose, Grandpa will sleep with you. At this moment, Noah felt a fire burning in his trembling heart. Mira and Lisanna tidied up Noah's clothes at the same time and revealed unprecedentedly beautiful smiles as they spoke in unison. Come back soon. Upon hearing this, Noah took a deep breath. In the next second, Noah revealed a fearless smile to everyone. I'll definitely come back. After saying this, Noah's figure gradually turned into a blur of light and disappeared bit by bit. Only that fearless smile was engraved into everyone's eyes like a brand. It drilled into their hearts and would never be erased. On a wooden beam at the very top of the guild, Mavis also watched Noah's figure gradually disappear. Only when Noah was completely gone did she close her eyes and put her hands together in prayer and place them in front of her. Her posture was like that of a dreamy saintess. Soon after, a sentence so soft that only Mavis herself could hear reverberated in the air. Please give my most outstanding child your blessings. I wish him a safe return. On this day, Noah brought the blessings of Fairy Tale's family and companions to the final battlefield. There was only one destination. Between worlds. Chapter 2179. When Noah opened his eyes again, a burst of ear-piercing vibrations, like the violent friction of air, immediately drilled into his ears, causing Noah's eardrums to hurt. This abnormal situation made Noah's heart suddenly tighten. He quickly opened his eyes and was immediately stunned. In the pure white world, pieces of feathers exuding a soft white light seemed to have suffered some serious stimulation, quickly flying back and forth aimlessly in the surroundings. Above the pure white world, outside the bright barrier, red shadows that resembled the Grim Reaper seemed to have rioted. They gathered together, densely packed, and continuously bombarded downwards. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Amidst the thunderous booms, the resplendent barrier continued to withstand the impact and shook violently. That scene was simply like a huge crimson wave crashing against a dazzling beach. It was as if it wanted to break through the beach as it continuously crashed against the resplendent barrier. Such a scene made Noah's expression change directly. However, before Noah could do anything, two petite and slender palms pressed down on his shoulders. Don't be impulsive, little Noah, now is not the time for you to make a move. Gaia looked at the sky, her young face tense. Moreover, with your current strength, even if you rush up, it will only be a dead end. Don't worry. Alea also looked at the scene in the sky and said. They just felt that the barrier was about to fail, so they gathered their strength, intending to buy time to break through the only line of defense. Based on the current situation, they should be able to hold on for a while. Is that so? Noah was a little relieved, but he also said apologetically. Sorry, it's all because of me. If it wasn't for Noah wanting to return to Fairy Tale and see his family and friends again, the current situation wouldn't have become so bad, right? Gaia and Alea shook their heads at Noah at the same time. You don't need to apologize, little Noah. Gaia smiled. As long as you can eliminate your last worry and fight with all your strength, then everything is worth it. Moreover, this battle was forced upon you by myriad worlds. Alea shook his head as well. We can only rely on you, but you can't rely on anything. We should be the ones apologizing. That's not right, Noah immediately retorted. Before this, I had indeed never thought that I would bear such a mission. However, I do not reject this mission at all. Because, in those worlds, there are family, friends, and lovers that I am familiar with. Noah smiled calmly. If it's to protect them, then I'm more than willing. Hearing this, both Gaia and Alea laughed. However, the situation did not allow them to have such a leisurely chat. Boom! Following an even louder explosion, the entire pure white world trembled fiercely as though the heavens and earth were shaking. It was very frightening. Noah was almost shaken to the ground. He stabilized his body with great difficulty and the smile on his face disappeared without a trace. It seems like the attack is fiercer than we thought. Gaia's voice was no longer as calm as before. We don't have much time to waste. It's best if we begin now. Alea looked at Noah. Are you ready? No problem. Noah nodded heavily. Let's begin. Gaia and Alea looked at each other and nodded in unison. They pointed forward abruptly. At the next moment, a stone plate that was also pure white in color and surrounded by pure white mysterious words slowly floated over to Noah. Looking at the pure white stone plate floating before him, Noah's heart throbbed. The throbbing was the connection between Noah and the pure white stone plate before him. World authority. World sovereignty. World favor. Before the three powers transformed, they originally belonged to Noah. Now, the three powers had appeared in front of Noah. Even though they were still as unreachable as before, the connection still existed. All right, little Noah. Gaia's expression was solemn. Assimilate the powers that belong to you into your body. Don't worry that you won't be able to absorb them. Alea's voice carried a sense of solemnity. You are the reincarnation of a world fragment. You were born with three great physiques. You will definitely be able to absorb these powers that no other life form can possess. Alea's words caused Noah to suddenly wake up. Noah was born with three great physiques. 1. A physique that allowed him to be immune to all negative powers. 2. A physique that allowed him to absorb all powers that entered his body. 3. A physique that allowed him to recover all powers on his own. Makarov named the three great physiques as having extremely strong repelling, tolerance, and independence. Repelling all negative powers. Tolerance, containing all powers that entered his body. Independence, recovering all powers independently. Noah was born with the three great characteristics as though it was natural for him to possess them. It could be said that to a large extent, Noah was able to reach where he was today because of the three great physiques. Now, Noah finally understood why he had the three great physiques. It was because he was the reincarnation of a world fragment. Were there any negative powers that could affect the world? No. Were there any powers that the world could not contain? No. Were there any powers that the world could not recover on its own? None. Curses, weakness, poisoning, and decay, all negative powers, Noah had never heard of any of them that could be used on the world. Magic, curses, and spells, all mysterious powers, Noah had never heard of any of them that were not allowed by the world. Even when Noah entered other worlds with the authority of the God Slayer, there was no rejection in the beginning. It was not until the turmoil in the world space that there was a restriction that he could only adapt to within a month. However, it only required a period of adaptation. Of course, whether it was magic power, divine power, spiritual power, or other powers that filled nature, the world could always recover on its own. In view of this, Noah had the three great physiques. With these three great physiques, Noah could possess powers that others could never fuse with. I see. Noah suddenly murmured. Is this how my three great physiques came about? In that case, the world authority, world sovereignty, and world grace were definitely not out of reach for Noah. As long as he could fuse with them, they would be Noah's. It's time to take back the power that belongs to you, little Noah. Gaia smiled at Noah. Go. That's the power you should have. Alea also looked at Noah. Go. Even the pure white stone plate seemed to be urging something. It slightly trembled, causing the pure white mysterious characters and pure white mysterious patterns to flash with light. Noah glanced at Gaia and then at Alea. Then, under the gaze of Gaia and Alea, he closed his eyes and then suddenly opened them. In the next second, Noah resolutely reached out his hand to the pure white stone plate in front of him. Clang! When Noah's hand touched the pure white stone plate, a dazzling light shone from the pure white stone plate. It was the same soft white light as the feathers that represented the world itself. Under the soft white light, Noah clearly felt it. In his heart, the throbbing that had been maintaining a connection with his power suddenly expanded and sped up. Dong 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 dong. A heartbeat-like sound resounded from Noah's body. In the next moment, even Noah's body flashed with white light, illuminating the pure white world around him. Whing! Around him, feathers that looked like flustered birds spun one after another. Like Noah, they flashed with white light. The white light seemed to be happy with the growth of a child. The white light seemed to be welcoming the birth of its own kind. Under the white light, Noah closed his eyes again. Immediately, the pure white stone plate turned into a stream of light and entered Noah's body. Chapter 2180. Inside Noah's body, there was a universe sea. It was the cosmic sea formed by the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. To be more precise, this cosmic sea was the simulated star map, another cosmology, itself. Stars as dazzling as the Milky Way floated in this universe sea, emitting dazzling starlight from time to time. It was very beautiful. With just a thought from Noah, the light emitted by these stars would immediately expand, giving Noah the power of Avesta and illusory star Tai Sui, allowing Noah to burst forth with endless power. However, at this moment, all the stars in this part of universe ocean suddenly dimmed. This was because in this part of the universe, there suddenly appeared something more dazzling than the stars. Hum. With a trembling sound, the pure white stone plate with the pure white mysterious characters suddenly broke through the edge of the universe sea, flying into this part of the universe sea like a spaceship entering outer space. Clang! The extremely dazzling pure white light illuminated the entire universe ocean. All of a sudden, it overshadowed the light of the stars and turned the entire universe ocean into a pure white color. Just like that, the pure white stone plate abruptly broke into this part of the universe and flew over. Wherever it passed, the stars all retreated. Not long after, the pure white stone plate came to the center of the universe sea, as if it had found its own throne, suddenly sitting there. At this moment, the dazzling white light that bloomed from the stone plate converged little by little, shrinking back into the stone plate. Then, two phenomena occurred. Clang! On the pure white stone plate, a beam of brilliance was like a bridge to the starry sky, extending toward the deepest part of the universe sea, and finally, it became impossible to see the end. Hum! The pure white mysterious characters surrounding the stone plate trembled all of a sudden. Then, one by one, they merged into the cosmic sea and disappeared. With a swoosh sound, an illusory figure appeared in this part of the universe sea. This illusory figure was a phantom formed by Noah's consciousness. That is. Noah looked at the dazzling bridge that led to the deepest part of universe ocean and nodded as if he had understood something. A bridge to possibility. Athena once said that the sovereignty of the 24 suns from Hecate could be used to explore the possibilities in Noah's body, allowing Noah to achieve great growth. Unfortunately, what was hidden in Noah's body was a possibility comparable to a world, and it was not something that the sun's sovereignty could draw out. However, after the sun's sovereignty transformed into a world's sovereignty, the possibility of being comparable to a world could naturally be drawn out. The bridge in front of him was the medium that would lead Noah to his potential location. However, there's no hurry for now. Noah didn't immediately connect with the bridge. Instead, he closed his eyes and sensed his body. Authority was an active type of power that could only be used by Noah in battle. Sovereignty was an auxiliary type of power that was used to draw out all the possibilities in Noah's body. Grace, on the other hand, was an amplification type of power that had long been integrated into Noah's body. At this moment, Noah's ability value had turned into a complicated message that was fed back to Noah's mind. Noah Dole LV. Max strength. Durability. Dexterity. Agility. Magic. Mystery. Sorcerer. Swordsman. Shatter. Toughness. Magic, weapon refinement, steel-making magic. Copy, refine, and forge all weapons. The level of copied, refined, and forged weapons will be upgraded according to the level of the mystery development ability. The power of copied, refined, and forged weapons will be strengthened according to the level of the magic basic ability. Sword's blessing, permanent magic. Permanent blessing. Reduce physical attacks by 100% against low-level existences. Reduce physical attacks by 90% against same-level existences. Cold smelting, quick attack magic. Tempering. Tempering is successful and can be crushed. Tempering effect is completely effective against low-level existences. Tempering effect is weakened against same-level existences. Skills, protection from the world, permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that have a direct relationship with luck will eventually lead to the most favorable results. Growth from oneself, permanent skill. Permanent enhancement of initiative behavior. Enhancement effect is determined according to the 4 basic ability levels of strength, durability, dexterity, and dexterity. What? When the information of the ability value was fed back to Noah's mind and was known by Noah, Noah took a deep breath. Basic ability level. Development ability level. This did not mean that Noah's basic ability and development ability had no level, but the basic ability and development ability obtained by the grace blessing could no longer be expressed in the sacred text. Because the sacred text was the text used by God. It was a bit too low-end to express Noah's ability value at this moment. It could not be expressed at all. Even the way to express the level was very ambiguous. LV Max. Noah felt a little incredulous. That is to say, my current level has been raised to the highest level. What was the so-called grace? Why could it lead to the possibility of the owner and let the owner be sublimated? For this question, the gods who gave the grace to the people answered this way. That is the path that can lead you to God. Yes. That was the path that could lead people to God. Every time the ability value was upgraded, it allowed the people in the lower realm to get closer to God. Therefore, everyone knew that when their ability value was raised to the highest level, then, at that time, humans could become God. However, no one knew how high this level was, not even God knew. Because, so far, no one had ever reached the highest level and become a God. After the transformation of Noah's grace, from the grace of God to the grace of the world. In other words, once the ability value of this grace was raised to the highest level, it would make people comparable to the world. Now, Noah had reached this level. Even Noah's magic and skills had changed. The magic that could refine all weapons, weapon refinement. That meant that Noah could refine all the weapons he knew, no longer like before, where they could only exist as imitations. Even the refined weapons could be strengthened according to the basic ability of magic and the development ability of mystery, so the weapons that Noah refined could easily surpass the prototype. The magic that could weaken physical attacks, sword's blessing. The effect of this magic was already heaven-defying. Completely immune to the physical attacks of low-level existences. Physical attacks of the same level were weakened by 90%. In other words, except for the existence of the same level as Noah, the physical attacks of other existences would no longer be effective on Noah, making Noah invincible. Even if it was an existence of the same level, which was also comparable to the world, it could weaken physical attacks by 90%. What was cheating? That was cheating. As for the existence of a higher level than Noah, there was no existence of a higher level than the world. So, there was no need to consider this at all. As for the freezing smelting magic, it also became a cheating level. At least, Noah could be sure that if he used this magic now, as long as he spent enough time, even the world itself could be completely tempered. The three magic, impressively all transformed into a power more terrifying than Noah's previous power. As for the skills, in addition to the original, protection from the world, Noah had one more skill. Growth from the self. Depending on the level of the four basic abilities of strength, durability, dexterity, and agility, it was a skill that permanently strengthened active behavior. In other words, it was the permanent effect of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. No matter what kind of behavior, as long as it was an attack, it could be strengthened. With Noah's current level, the extent of the strengthening was absolutely terrifying. This is the power comparable to the world. Noah shuddered. Chapter 2181. It wasn't until this moment that Noah understood what Gaia and Alea meant by the strongest, and what it means to be comparable to a world's power. This is just the power presented by grace. If I use the transformed authority that reaches the world level, how strong will I become? Thinking of this, Noah's heart couldn't help but tremble a little. However, when he thought of the existence of the eye, Noah's expression became dignified again. Undoubtedly, I have this level of power, but Gaia and Alea never said that I can win against the opponent, but I need to fight on my own. It is conceivable that the opponent's power is absolutely terrifying. I can't let my guard down. With this thought, Noah suppressed the emotions in his heart, raised his eyes, and looked ahead. There, the bright bridge leading to the deepest part of the cosmic sea emitted a faint brilliance, illuminating all the surrounding stars. I still need to obtain more power, more power, more power. After making up his mind, Noah leaped onto the resplendent bridge in a flash. Whing! The resplendent bridge suddenly trembled. Immediately, Noah noticed. The surrounding scenery was moving back at an extremely terrifying speed. No. It wasn't the scenery that was moving back at an extremely terrifying speed, but Noah was moving forward at an extremely terrifying speed. The bright bridge was like a tunnel of light, causing Noah to turn into light, constantly flashing forward at an astonishing speed that surpassed the speed of light. Under such terrifying speed, Noah didn't know how much time had passed around him, causing his body to become sluggish. Until the end of the bright bridge. That is, Noah said with some surprise. Because in front of Noah, at the end of the bright bridge, there was a black hole located there. Although it was called a black hole, it was actually pure white. Under the automatic movement of the bright bridge, Noah instantly passed through the pure white black hole. Noah only felt his vision blurred, as if his entire vision was filled with white light, causing him to involuntarily close his eyes, raise a hand, and block in front of his body. Not long after, Noah gradually opened his eyes. Then, Noah discovered that he had arrived at a void. This is the deepest part of my body. Noah's face was full of doubts, and he couldn't help but look around. After looking around, Noah was stunned. In the surrounding void, there were bright spots of light that looked like light particles floating slowly like fireflies. It was an exceptionally beautiful sight. No! Noah suddenly woke up. Those aren't light spots. Yes. What was floating in the surrounding void was not light spots. The light spots were just some faint light emitted from the body. If one looked carefully, they would discover it. Among the specks of light, there were fragments. Pieces of pure white fragments appeared. Some of the fragments were big, some were small, but all of them were emitting a faint light. And if all of these fragments were combined, then it would form an existence that Noah was very familiar with. Feather. Noah murmured. World fragments, that's right. Those pure white fragments were the world fragments. However, it was different from the world fragments in Between Worlds. In Between Worlds, the world fragments were divided into two, and as long as two fragments were gathered, it could be restored to its original state. But these world fragments in front of him were like smashed glass, shattering into countless pieces. If it wasn't because this was the deepest part of Noah's body, then even Noah wouldn't have been able to discover that these fragments could actually form a feather after being combined. The world fragments that appeared in the deepest part of my body. Noah closed his eyes. It seems that these fragments are my original body. Noah was the reincarnation of the fragments of the starting world. These fragments that appeared in the deepest part of Noah's body were undoubtedly the fragments of the starting world, and also Noah's original body. It might be a little difficult to understand if it was the original body, but it was easier to understand if it was the soul. So, these fragments floating in the deepest part of Noah's body were Noah's soul. In the past, Bio and Draeger's consciousness resided here. Once, the soul light that Freya saw was the light emitted by these world fragments. So, what Freya saw was the light of a world, and naturally, she was obsessed with it. Of course, Freya was just a goddess, and didn't have the ability to directly see the world itself. If the starting world hadn't turned into countless fragments, Freya wouldn't even be able to see the light of Noah's soul, right? In other words, the light of Noah's soul that made Freya crazy was actually just the tip of the iceberg, the light that remained after the world shattered. In other words, Noah's soul was like these fragments, and in fact, it had always been in a broken state. Then, there's only one thing I need to do now. Noah understood what his next step should be. If I want to have power comparable to the world, then, there's only one thing I need to do. Noah looked at the fragments in the void. And that is to restore my soul to its complete state. Fortunately, Noah had already obtained the medium to restore them to their complete state. Clang! Accompanied by a burst of light, Noah's whole body bloomed with pure white light. And in that pure white light, dazzling balls of light began to flash around Noah. These balls of light had extremely exquisite patterns. Half of them were the 12 zodiac signs. The other half were the 12 equatorial stars. It was the power of sovereignty that represented the ownership of the sun in the past, and now transformed into the ownership of the world. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. 12 constellations. Rat, Ox, Tiger, Rabbit, Dragon, Snake, Horse, Goat, Monkey, Chicken, Dog, and Pig. The 12 zodiac signs and the 12 equatorial stars each turned into balls of light, rotating around Noah's body, emitting a dazzling light. Since the sovereignty of the sun is the power to control the sun, then the sovereignty of the world is naturally the power to control the world. Then, I'll use the sovereignty of the 24 worlds as a medium, let them become the sovereignty of the starting world, control this side of the world, restore my soul to its complete state, and own a world. Noah seemed to intend to embrace the entire void, and spread out his hands. Rise! The moment Noah's voice fell, the silence in the void was broken with a loud bang. Buzz, 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 buzz. Pieces of light fragments that emitted a faint glow, like fireflies, suddenly trembled, like the final radiance of the setting sun, and released an unprecedented light. At the same time, the 24 sovereigns floating around Noah also bloomed with light, as if the entire void had turned into a cocoon, and heavily surrounded it. Under the light of the sovereigns, pieces of fragments began to gather towards the center. Buzz, 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 buzz. The sound of tremors continued to ring out. Boom, boom, boom. The void was also trembling suddenly. The pieces of fragments that covered the entire void at this time turned into meteors, cutting across the sky, and went straight to the center, gradually converging into a ball. Condense. Noah's voice resounded. Under this voice, the pieces of fragments that gathered together gradually turned into a blurry light shadow, as if they had received some kind of command, and slowly merged together. Then, a feather was born. Clang! A dazzling brilliance bloomed from the feather. The brilliance was so dazzling that it was impossible to look at it directly, and it was enough to burn the eyeballs of any living being. Only Noah was not affected by the dazzling brilliance. Because the brilliance was not someone else's thing, but Noah's real soul brilliance. The brilliance emitted by the soul formed by a world. Under the illumination of the brilliance, Noah did not feel any discomfort, only a comfortable feeling as if he was bathing in a hot spring. After all, that side of the world was Noah's soul. Looking at the perfect feathers, Noah, who was surrounded by sovereigns, suddenly smiled. His figure suddenly turned into a stream of light, flew out, and entered the feathers that were emitting dazzling brilliance, and disappeared. Chapter 2182. Not good. Gaia could not help but raise his voice. After all, we have already done what we can do. The surrounding pure white space suddenly spun and turned into darkness. The imaginative energy was the substance that formed the world. Even the starting world was born from the imaginative energy. Even the eye and shadow were the same. As for the shadow, it absorbed the evil fantasy of the starting world and had the ability to destroy the world. When this world was born, Noah would be able to obtain truly limitless power. Only by repairing the starting world and turning it into his own personal world could Noah obtain the power of a world. This moment was the key. That extremely soft sound, not to mention thousands of meters away, even if it was a meter away, if one did not listen carefully, one would not be able to hear it. Using this power could allow authority, sovereignty, and grace to evolve to the same level as the world. It could also allow Gaia and Alea to temporarily upgrade and transcend the original world and enter the space between worlds. What he had done could only buy him some time. The two great restraining forces easily discovered it. Of course, the starting world had already been destroyed and could not be repaired. Stars. Wang. The crack was only the size of a thumb. It was the center of the space between worlds. Little Noah has finally started to repair his soul. Under such circumstances, the densely packed death god army leaped up again, gathered into a group, and launched a second attack. Hong Long. Gaia and Alea were only two restraints in one world. It was impossible for them to block the shadow that was born from the eye that could destroy thousands of worlds. Hence, the starting world could be considered reborn. Only by borrowing the power of the center of the space between worlds could the two restraints resist to a certain extent. Milky Way. Universe. Gaia and Alea looked at the increasingly violent Red Reaper in the air. Their numbers were increasing as they gathered like a well-trained army, preparing to launch the third round of collective attacks. Gaia and Alea felt anxious in their hearts. They gritted their teeth and extracted more imaginative power, fusing it into the barrier. However, Gaia and Alea, who were far away on the ground, heard this sound at the same time. Their expressions changed as they looked up. On the barrier, a crack appeared. After all, Noah was the reincarnation of the starting world fragment and was equivalent to the starting world itself. Even a formed world could be destroyed by the shadow, not to mention a material that was not formed yet. Hong Long. Gaia and Alea actually already knew. This meant that the current situation was a little dangerous. No, it was not a little dangerous, it was extremely dangerous. However, upon seeing this crack, Gaia and Alea's expressions changed again and again. Let's hope everything goes smoothly. Immediately after that, the densely packed death god army suddenly flashed and charged down like a huge wave from the sky in a more violent manner than before. Kacha! The two restraints knew that with imaginative energy alone, it was impossible to destroy the shadow. Therefore, Gaia and Alea knew. We can transfer the another cosmology to this place. Floating in the center of this space, Noah looked around and frowned slightly. Before that, Noah's world won't be able to be successfully created. In the next moment, waves of white fog rose from the crystal-clear crystal. It transformed into a whirlpool that soared upwards. In the blink of an eye, it swept through the space and landed on the barrier in the sky. With that said, Noah waved his hand and the world's sovereigns floating around him immediately flashed with light. At this time, Noah was in a white space. Noah, who didn't know anything, still had his eyes closed and was immersed in his own world. Clang! The barrier that had completely dimmed immediately flashed with thousands of brilliance and became extremely bright. In the air between the worlds, outside the bright barrier, the Red Reapers seemed to have been stimulated by something, and the color of their bodies became a little dense. After making this judgment, the two restraints decisively made their move. At that time, little Noah will have the ability to save thousands of worlds and save billions of lives. Gaia looked at Noah closely. Boom! The resplendent barrier that was blocking the Death God army suddenly dimmed from the impact. The radiance on the barrier seemed to have been annihilated and instantly dimmed by who knew how many times. However, imaginative energy can only be used to create and not to destroy. Then, Noah whispered to himself. For this reason, even the thousands of worlds seemed to be nervous for Noah. They surrounded Noah and kept circling him. It was unknown whether they were cheering him on or urging him. The barrier can't hold on any longer. The restoration of the origin world was a process of Noah's gradual progress towards perfection. It's very similar to Between the Worlds. That's right. Alea nodded heavily. Wang wang wang. Even the barrier that resisted the invasion of the shadow relied on imaginative energy to be upgraded to the same level as the world. Only then was it able to resist the invasion of the shadow. The energy fluctuation that originated from the world itself. Gaia's eyes lit up. Of course, those worlds were not the only ones that reacted. Dazzling starlight appeared again and turned into a river of stars that ran through every corner of the universe. In the blink of an eye, galaxies, nebulae, rivers of stars, and bursts of starlight formed from every corner of the universe, causing the universe ocean to continuously extend out. We can only pray here. Alea softly said. Then, under the control of Gaia and Alea, the sparkling and translucent crystal started to spin. At this moment, an extremely soft cracking sound suddenly came from the barrier. With that thought in mind, Noah waved his hand. Two star maps immediately tore through the void and appeared abruptly. They merged with the surrounding stars and became one with them. In the world between worlds, the feathers that represented the world itself suddenly trembled violently. They surrounded Noah, who had his eyes closed, and danced and spun around as if they were in joy. Looking at this scene, Gaia and Alea were pleasantly surprised. If Noah wanted to truly possess the power of a world, then he had to completely restore the world fragment that was his soul. With a strange sound, a sparkling and translucent crystal suddenly emerged from the space and appeared in front of Gaia and Alea. For example, the various worlds used imaginative energy as the material and then absorbed the fantasy of the starting world to form. At the same time, on Noah's body, waves of inexplicable undulations began to turn into ripples and gradually reverberated. They converged with the surrounding feathers and were extremely harmonious. A bit too monotonous. Looking at this formation, the next attack will completely shatter it. Alea's expressionless face was brimming with a dignified atmosphere. In every corner of the darkness, bursts of starlight suddenly flashed and gathered together to form stars. An earth-shattering roar resounded, causing the entire pure white space to tremble violently. Seeing this scene clearly, the two great restraining forces controlling the core of Between the Worlds not only did not relax in the slightest, but instead became more and more dignified. After countless years, the starting world has finally begun to be reborn. A world that regained life through Noah's hands. Amidst the roar, the pure white world suddenly trembled. If it was said that Noah's mission was to save everything in the end, then Gaia and Alea's mission was to allow Noah to reach this step. The roar was still earth-shattering, causing the light on the barrier to almost completely disappear. Immediately after, the white mist known as the imaginative power merged into the barrier. Apart from Noah, in this between the worlds, there were other existences that could be compared to the other worlds. The densely packed red reapers that slammed into the barrier were illuminated by the thousands of brilliance, and they seemed to let out miserable shrieks. Like vampires illuminated by sunlight, they rose into the air and retreated from the range of the brilliance. Chapter 2183. Noah could clearly feel that he had completely merged with this world. Because this world was Noah's soul, Noah's origin. Noah only needed a thought, and he could do whatever he wanted in this world. Therefore, Noah could create a universe. Therefore, Noah could create planets. In fact, Noah could also annihilate everything in this world into nothingness with a single thought, returning it to its original, boundless, pure white state. Of course, Noah could also create life and miracles in this world. To put it bluntly, Noah had become the god of this world. A god in the truest sense. Time, space, life, and the universe were all under Noah's control. However, it's better to have only one planet that can give birth to life. Noah turned his head and looked in one direction. There was a star that was emitting light and heat. The solar system. Noah looked in the direction of the sun and cast his gaze on a planet that was completely blue. That's Earth. After saying that, Noah, who carried the sovereignty of 24 worlds, turned into a stream of light and instantly exceeded the speed of light, shooting toward the blue planet. The sky was blue. The earth was green. The endless ocean occupied most of the space. Patches of forest occupied every corner of the ground. Noah, who descended from the sky, floated in the air and looked at the land full of vitality below. His heart was surging. This is my world, a world that belongs to me alone. The original world had been reborn. This world was Noah's soul. Noah had absolute control over this world. To give birth to life, it's just a thought. That feeling of omnipotence could definitely make any human go crazy. Fortunately, Noah's temperament was strong enough and he did not immerse himself in the impulse to do whatever he wanted. However, that did not affect Noah's transformation of this world that belonged to him alone. If I don't do anything, then this world will probably gradually evolve into an ordinary world without any mysteries, just like the original world before it was destroyed, right? Noah thought to himself. But that won't do me any good. With that, Noah pointed at the earth below. Around him, the sovereignty of each world flickered and bloomed with light and the next second, the entire world shook violently as if there was a crustal movement. However, after the tremor, the entire world stabilized again. This tremor did not cause mountains to collapse and the earth to crack, nor did it cause the end of the world. It was like an illusion that passed in the blink of an eye. However, this world was completely different from the world they had been in before the earthquake. Before that trembling, this world didn't have any mysteries, extremely ordinary. After the tremor, an incomparably surging energy flowed out from the air of this world, instantly filling the entire world. Magic power. The energy between heaven and earth suddenly transformed into magic power when using magic and spells. Divine power. The energy between heaven and earth transformed into the divine power consumed by the gods when they used their powers. Divine power. The energy between heaven and earth transformed into the divine power consumed by the elves when they existed. Light power. The energy between heaven and earth transformed into the light power used by the angels. With a single thought from Noah, the energy that filled the heavens and the earth constantly transformed between various kinds of forces. Of course, this endless energy could also be provided to Noah continuously according to Noah's thoughts. Whether it's physical strength or mental strength, it can also be provided by this world. Noah was in a very good mood. In this way, even without the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, I can achieve true infinity. It was an infinity that was even more transcendent than when Orpheus and Lilith were in their complete states. Like the dragon god, Noah could provide power to other individuals. Noah could also use the energy that lingered in this world to repair himself. Even if he was blasted to pieces, as long as this world was not destroyed, Noah could regenerate infinitely. Noah could even make this world give birth to endless vitality and infuse it to other individuals, so that they could live forever and no longer die of old age. This is the power that the world can use. It's a gift from the world. Noah could not help but sigh. If it weren't for the fact that my existence is on the same level as the world, with the love that the myriad worlds have for me, I wouldn't need to travel to so many worlds and desperately pursue power. Of course, Noah knew that if he really was not on the same level as the world, then the myriad worlds would definitely not only love him. Only Noah, as the child of the world, was the Noah who was doted on by the myriad worlds. If not, then I would just be an individual among the billions of lives that were born. I wouldn't even be able to attract the attention of the world, right? Just like Noah now, he could also create endless lives with a thought and let them reproduce in this world. In this way, Noah was equivalent to the father of all lives. However, with billions of lives, could Noah protect and take care of each and every one of them from beginning to end? Even if he could, Noah would not do it. Treating everyone equally sounds wonderful, but this way, people won't work hard, they won't fight, and they won't get any growth. In the end, they'll just be walking corpses without flesh and blood. Looking at the world from the perspective of the Creator, Noah really understood some of the true meaning. In that way, it would be no different from the closed world that I killed in the box. Therefore, Noah did not want to directly create life. Let this world evolve on its own. Noah looked down at the land below. I hope that this world will not be like that world. That world was naturally referring to the world of the dark bullet. If the direction of this world eventually became like that, then Noah might really not be able to resist the thought of exterminating all humans. Is this the way of thinking when looking at things from the perspective of the Creator? After all, if life became so easy to create and so easy to destroy, then it was not worth cherishing. Therefore, in the eyes of many gods, humans were just a group of ants, and it was not without reason. Of course, everything is possible. Noah closed his eyes and quietly felt this world. If I can't win this final battle, then this newly born world will be destroyed in an instant. Now, it is too early to talk about the direction of life. With that thought in mind, Noah opened his eyes again. With a wave of his hand, the glimmering sovereigns of the worlds around him spun and fused into this world. The world's sovereignty had become the center of this world. Just like the sun's sovereignty, whoever obtained the sovereignty could control the operation of the sun to a certain extent. If you even gathered 24 sun sovereignty, you could completely control the power of the sun. The same principle applied to the world's sovereignty. Although this world is the origin of my soul, and the control is always with me, if I let the control of this world leak out and someone obtains it, then unless I act to restrain them, anyone will be able to control this world to a certain extent. In other words, once someone obtained the sovereignty of all 24 worlds, they could become an omnipotent god in this world like Noah. Of course, this world is my soul. If I don't allow it, then no one can have the slightest influence on this world. However, if the world's sovereignty was placed casually in this world, when humans appeared in the future and noticed the existence of the world's sovereignty, then a war against the world's sovereignty would definitely occur, right? Although that could be a kind of excitement, I don't want my soul to only be filled with killing all day long. Therefore, Noah directly integrated the sovereignty of the world into this side of the world. Except for Noah, no one could obtain it. The world in my body has been formed, and infinite power has been obtained. My foundation has been successfully forged, and I have the power to annihilate all evil. After saying that, Noah raised his head and looked at the boundless sky. His dark and deep eyes flashed with an unprecedented awe-inspiring expression. This battle. I will do my best. Absolutely. I can't lose. Chapter 2184. At the same time, in Between the Worlds, a battle without any suspense was still going on. In the sky of the pure white world, the dense wave of red reapers floated back and forth like ghosts. They were extremely chaotic at times and orderly at other times. It was extremely contradictory. However, from the movements of the red reapers, one could still see the pattern between chaos and order. When the red reapers wanted to open up a distance for charging, their movements would be very chaotic. Because they would not form a crowd and could pass through their companions like phantoms. They would not hinder the rest of the red reapers and could retreat at will. Opening up a distance made their retreat slower. And when the red reapers wanted to attack collectively, their movements would be very orderly, as if they were controlled by a consciousness. They would attack at the same time. Therefore, when the surging crimson waves fell from the sky and hit the barrier, their speed was simply extremely fast. At the very least, Gaia and Alea, who were controlling the center of the world between worlds, only saw a blur in front of their eyes. The surging crimson waves flashed through space and heavily bombarded the barrier. Rumble. A terrifying roar that was enough to shatter one's eardrums resounded all around. The pure white world suddenly trembled, causing the feathers below to flutter around like birds that had lost their heads out of fear. The barrier that resisted the bombardment of the red reapers had ripples all over it. It was like a lake that had a large stone thrown into it, violently fluctuating. With each fluctuation, the barrier's radiance would dim a little, causing the barrier's resistance to become weaker and weaker. Kacha! Kacha kacha! With the continuous bombardment of the red reapers, cracks began to spread on the barrier. In just a short while, the entire barrier was covered. It looked like a fragile piece of glass, like a broken lotus root. It gave people a feeling that if they used more strength, they would be able to break it. In fact, the barrier would not be able to hold on for much longer. Even though Gaia and Alea continued to infuse their mental power into the barrier, they were still unable to prevent more and more cracks from appearing on the barrier. The densely packed red reapers, on the other hand, seemed to have seen the dawn of victory. Their movements became more and more intense. Like the receding tide, they suddenly retreated and rose into the sky, forming a new formation. Isn't this too regular? Gaia couldn't help but complain. Could it be that these shadows really have their own independent consciousness? Judging from Shadow's actions, it was clear that these red reapers were not without any intelligence. They were more instinctive than beasts. On the contrary, it was easy to discover the fact that Shadow possessed extraordinary intelligence from his every move. If they didn't have intelligence, these shadows definitely wouldn't have launched such an orderly attack. Furthermore, their coordination was extremely precise. However, if the coordination is too precise, it proves that these shadows may not have their own independent consciousness. They only have a simple consciousness, but their real actions are controlled by another consciousness. Alea calmly analyzed. Perhaps, the one controlling the shadows is the consciousness of the I, and not the independent consciousness of the shadows. When it came to consciousness, Gaia and Alea were the absolute authorities. After all, the two major restraints, one was the will of the planet, and the other was the collective consciousness of humans. In this aspect, no one could surpass their authority. Therefore, the two of them easily saw the relationship between the I and the shadow. Obviously, the I is the real culprit, and these shadows are only its tentacles. Gaia curled her lips. Just the tentacles are so difficult to deal with, then how difficult would the real body be? I don't know. Alea turned her head and looked at Noah's direction. Now we can only hope that Noah can complete his transformation in time. Otherwise, let alone the eye, even the shadow, can destroy all the worlds. Hearing this, Gaia also looked at Noah's direction. Wang 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 wang. On Noah's body, whose eyes were tightly closed, waves of invisible fluctuations were constantly reverberating. It was like a circle of ripples, but also like a series of ripples, constantly spreading to the surroundings. Gaia and Alea could both feel that as time passed, the invisible fluctuations not only became stronger little by little, but also appeared more frequently. The fluctuations that could only be emitted by the world itself were so strong that it made Gaia and Alea's heart palpitate. However, since the fluctuations did not stop, it proved that Noah's inner world was still evolving. Looking at this trend, it should be soon. Gaia clenched her teeth. No matter what, we have to hold on, at least until little Noah completes the evolution of his inner world. Otherwise, it's all over. I know. Alea said expressionlessly. However, what we can do is limited. We can only increase the extraction of imaginative power and try to stall for time as much as possible. As they spoke, the two suppressive forces looked at each other and increased their output. Within the sparkling and translucent crystal, the white fog immediately rose up like a tornado. It soared into the sky and entered the barrier, causing the increasingly dim barrier to once again blossom with light. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The Red Reaper's army continued to bombard the barrier. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Cracks began to spread on the barrier. Wang, 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 wang. The fluctuations coming from Noah's body grew stronger and more frequent. The entire pure white world was caught in a tug-of-war between these three phenomena. The feathers that represented the world itself seemed to be anxious, pacing back and forth desperately. Under such circumstances, Gaia and Alea could only wholeheartedly infuse imaginative power into the barrier, desperately holding on for a single second. Wang 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 wang. At a certain moment, the invisible fluctuations coming from Noah's body seemed to be boiling and appeared crazily. Noticing this phenomenon, Gaia and Alea were both delighted. The transformation is about to be completed. Just hold on for a while more. However, Gaia and Alea were happy too early. Since Gaia and Alea could feel the intense fluctuations, then there was no reason why existences many levels higher than Gaia and Alea could not feel it. Thus, just as Gaia and Alea were rejoicing, a phenomenon occurred. Shio! Accompanied by an extremely sharp sound of breaking through the air, a crimson stream of light suddenly descended from the sky. The crimson stream of light was simply like a comet. The crimson comet suddenly appeared, pierced through the sky, and violently descended. Wherever it passed, the space trembled. The dense army of the grim reapers that floated back and forth like ghosts were like seawater that was forcefully split apart. When they were touched by the red comet that suddenly fell from the sky, they were instantly annihilated. Only the parts that were not touched by the comet were left behind. Immediately after, the crimson comet crashed into the barrier. Boom! An unprecedentedly loud roar turned into a violent impact. With the crimson comet as the center, it suddenly shook the barrier. Bang! The barrier that was bitterly resisting the endless Red Death God army did not even last a second under the direct attack of the crimson comet and directly shattered. What? Gaia and Alea exclaimed in shock. Shattered. The barrier shattered. The barrier that had been supporting the joint attack of the hundreds of millions of Grim Reapers was actually shattered by such a blow. Gaia and Alea were dumbfounded. However, the Red Death God army that had lost the barrier was not dumbfounded at all. Now, there was nothing that could stop them from destroying everything. Hua! In the next instant, countless red death gods rushed down like an avalanche and directly rushed to the ground below like a raging wave. Whing! On the ground, feather after feather fled in all directions in horror. Gaia and Alea's faces were pale as they stared at the red death gods that rushed down and filled the entire sky. Their hearts were trembling. It's over, Gaia and Alea couldn't help but feel despair. Chapter 2185. At this moment, in the pure white world, more than half of the space was occupied by the blood-red Grim Reaper. Everywhere it passed was dyed with a creepy color. The area that was not invaded was less than 1/10 of the space. And in this 1/10 of the space, the feathers were fleeing in panic. It was like a bird that felt a shotgun aiming at it. For a moment, it was a mess. As for Gaia and Alea, they could only stare at the red Grim Reaper wave that gushed down like an avalanche. Their minds were completely blank. As a form of suppression, their survival instincts were constantly trembling, causing Gaia and Alea to quickly escape. However, in this situation, where could Gaia and Alea escape to? Escape back to their own world. It was just a matter of sooner or later being destroyed. Under the scythe of the Red Reaper, which could destroy thousands of worlds, no world could survive. This was not the worst result. The worst result was that even Noah would be killed. In that case, there would be no hope at all. Thinking about this, Gaia and Alea's hearts hardened at the same time. Endless worlds, please listen to my voice. Gaia shouted. We can't let shadow touch your beloved child. That is our only hope. As long as this child is still alive, even if it is destroyed, it is only a matter of time before it is reborn through that child's hands. However, if that child encounters a calamity, then there will be no more hope. Alea also poured out his heart out. Therefore, we can't escape. We have to protect our only hope. The voices of the two great suppression turned into a sound wave that reverberated throughout the entire world. Under the influence of the sound wave, the feathers that were fleeing in panic suddenly came to a halt. In the next second, the feathers suddenly rotated and soared into the sky without any hesitation. They turned into streams of light and flew toward the red tide of the Grim Reaper that was surging down violently from all directions. Yes. The worlds that were extremely fearful of a shadow all rushed into the sky without hesitation. They took the initiative to fly toward the overwhelming Grim Reaper tide. Immediately, the feather that rushed at the front flashed with a dazzling brilliance. Boom! As if there was an explosion, the dazzling brilliance of the feather exploded and turned into fragments. The world was actually self-destructing. Boom 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 boom. As if it caused a chain reaction, the feathers flashed with a dazzling brilliance one after another and self-destructed, turning into fragments. Clang! In the next moment, the self-destruction of the worlds caused the energy of the entire world to converge into a barrier. With a dazzling brilliance, the barrier blocked the Grim Reaper tide. The Grim Reaper tide that was caught off guard suddenly and fiercely hit the barrier. Rumble! Amidst the rumbling, the tide of death that surged down explosively was like a wave that had collided with a reef, and it was smashed to the point of scattering in all directions, causing chaos. Boom 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 boom. The feathers that flew over were still self-destructing, gathering the energy of the worlds to form a barrier in the air, setting up a heavy defense line. Looking at this scene, Gaia and Alea's eyes flashed with a touch of pain. Using the huge amount of energy produced during the self-destruction to form a barrier to resist the invasion of the Grim Reaper tide. This was the only method that Gaia and Alea could think of. This method could only work for a limited time. After all, the energy produced during the explosion only lasted for a moment and couldn't last long. Therefore, the amount of time they needed to buy was the amount of worlds that had to be sacrificed. Needless to say, this was extremely cruel. However, this was the only way to continue stalling for time. Rumble. 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 The Grim Reaper tide seemed to have gone crazy. It kept crashing into the barrier, breaking through the barrier that could only last for a short time, constantly shortening the distance between them and the ground. Under such circumstances, the feathers in the air exploded crazily, shaking up a huge amount of energy that turned into a barrier to resist the invasion of the Grim Reaper tide. In the blink of an eye, countless worlds rushed into the air and self-destructed one after another, just to resist the invasion of the Grim Reaper tide for a few seconds. That scene was truly moving and tragic. Boom, 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 boom. Pieces of feathers continued to self-destruct, forming layers of barriers. Boom, 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 boom. The endless waves of the Grim Reaper kept crashing down, shattering the newly formed barriers and approaching the ground. Gaia and Alea had already lost count of how many worlds had self-destructed. The only thing that comforted them was that the speed of the Grim Reaper tide's invasion had slowed down significantly. Moreover, even if the feathers self-destructed one after another, after the explosion, the feathers would still fall like meteors and be absorbed by the worlds below, waiting to be recovered and repaired. Just like what Gaia and Alea had said, Noah was their only hope. If even Noah died, then the thousands of worlds would be destroyed sooner or later. However, if Noah could survive, then in the end, the worlds would be restored one by one. Since that was the case, a temporary destruction was not a big deal. As long as they could buy a little bit of time, it would be worth it. Therefore, the feathers soared into the sky one after another, self-destructing, turning into a barrier to protect the last line of defense. Gaia and Alea could only watch helplessly, unable to help at all. There was only one fact that made the two great restraints anxious. That was, even if countless worlds self-destructed one after another, blocking the speed of the Grim Reaper tide's invasion, the crimson-red tide was still unavoidably closing in on them. Not long after, the Grim Reaper tide was less than 100 meters away from the ground. Seeing this scene, Gaia couldn't help but become restless. Alea! Gaia couldn't help but shout. Can't you think of another way? If there was a way, it would have been implemented long ago. For the first time, a trace of anxiety appeared on Alea's young and tender face. A barrier that can block the invasion of the shadow. Back then, we only had the ability to create one. At that time, we already knew that this was the only chance to block the shadow, right? A barrier that could block the invasion of the shadow was not something that Gaia and Alea could create. Back then, the reason why Gaia and Alea were able to create such a barrier was because they could use imagination as a material. Secondly, it was because of the power provided by the thousands of worlds. During the World War upheaval, many worlds were destroyed by shadow, and there was no longer enough power to provide Gaia and Alea with enough power. Fortunately, at that time, Gaia and Alea had successfully created a barrier and made it in time. Then, Gaia and Alea fused this barrier into the Gate of Babylon and gave it to Noah. They only wanted to use it at the most crucial moment to save Noah's life and buy enough time. Otherwise, Gaia and Alea would have created a few more barriers and the situation would not have become so dangerous. Pang 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 pang. The sounds of the worlds exploding one after another continued to reverberate in the air, and they had long since become incessant. At this moment, there were less than 100 worlds left. Compared to the thousands of worlds, it was pitifully small. During this process, the red Grim Reaper tide was getting closer and closer. 80 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters, seeing the Grim Reaper tide in front of them, Gaia and Alea's breathing became hurried. Just when Gaia and Alea were at their wits' end, the fluctuations that had been violently reverberating from Noah's body suddenly stopped and gradually calmed down. The fluctuations that originally made people's hearts palpitate suddenly disappeared, causing Gaia and Alea to be startled at the same time. They suddenly turned their heads and looked in Noah's direction. At this moment, it was as if the movement of the entire world had disappeared. Not far in front of Gaia and Alea, Noah's eyelids trembled and he slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 2186. The moment Noah opened his eyes, the entire pure white world suddenly trembled. For a moment, it was as if the world had suddenly dimmed, causing the pure white color to fade away. Whether this phenomenon was real or just an illusion, Gaia and Alea didn't know. The two great restraints only knew that when Noah opened his eyes and the two met his deep black eyes, it was as if an invisible force suddenly attacked their minds, causing their minds to be in chaos. As for the restraints, their instincts made Gaia and Alea submit to Noah. After coming to their senses, Gaia and Alea realized what had happened, and they were shocked. However, Noah didn't pay attention to Gaia and Alea. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the sky. Noah saw it clearly. He saw feathers rising into the sky one after another and exploding in front of the Grim Reaper's wave. They condensed endless power into a barrier just to block the invasion of the Grim Reaper's wave for a short moment. That scene made Noah open his eyes wide and endless anger rose in his heart. Ping dash. A terrifying energy storm burst out from Noah's body, turning into an unprecedentedly terrifying impact that shook the surroundings. Get lost. Noah's angry roar was mixed in with the impact. In an instant, it expanded to the sky and reduced the distance of less than 10 meters to 0. The impact accurately bypassed the remaining feathers, bypassed Gaia and Alea, and attacked upward like a gust of wind. In the next second, the terrifying impact storm swallowed the endless Grim Reaper wave. Chee! This was the sound of waves extinguishing flames. Under such a sound, the red shadow of the Grim Reaper, which was the first to be touched by the terrifying storm, was crushed into a ball by an invisible pressure and was annihilated in an instant. Afterwards, the red phantoms of death were swallowed up by the terrifying storm one after another. As if they had been viciously crushed, they were annihilated one after another. In just a short period of time, wherever the impact passed, not a single Grim Reaper wave could survive. They were all crushed and disappeared without a trace. The whole process lasted less than 0.01 seconds. However, in this 0.01 second, tens of millions of shadows of the Grim Reaper were annihilated. What? Gaia and Alea's eyes widened and the shock in their hearts turned into horror. What? What happened just now? It was just a simple energy burst and it instantly destroyed so many Grim Reaper wave. Gaia and Alea were completely shocked. Noah, who didn't know when Gaia and Alea were shocked, suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in midair. Wong 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 dash. The remaining feathers suddenly fluttered around Noah's body and kept spinning. Noah could feel the emotional fluctuations released by the feathers surrounding him. Excitement. Joy. Joy. Happiness. Different emotional fluctuations were released from the feathers one by one and were clearly perceived by Noah. Noah knew that the worlds were rejoicing in their own growth. But in Noah's heart, there was only sadness. Looking at the feathers that fluttered around him, there were less than 100 of them. Noah slowly clenched his fist. Before the great upheaval in between the worlds, there were still many worlds that were not destroyed by the shadow. There were at least tens of millions of them. But after the great upheaval in between the worlds, there were less than 10,000 worlds left. Compared to before, it was unknown how many times less. As for before the eye was born, the entire between the worlds was still very prosperous. Even the starting world was still intact. The number of worlds that existed in the between the worlds was even more shocking. But now, there were less than 100 worlds left. The pitiful number made Noah's heart burn with sadness and anger. However, the more sad and angry he was, the calmer Noah's expression was. Noah lifted his head and looked at the red Grim Reaper army that covered the entire sky. Even though more than half of them had been wiped out by him, a fierce gleam flashed across his eyes. Immediately, Noah stretched out his hand and held a feather in his hand. As if he was talking to a small animal, he spoke softly. "You guys leave first. It's dangerous to stay here. The worlds naturally obeyed Noah's words. Thus, the feathers left Noah one after another and flew down, lingering around Gaia and Alea. Everyone suddenly became silent. Gaia and Alea looked at Noah, who was floating in the air and facing off against the endless Reaper army. He was like an ant that didn't know his own strength. At the same time, they held their breaths. Even the Red Reaper's shadow that couldn't wait to kill Noah and treated Noah as a great enemy and launched a violent attack without any explanation seemed to be frightened and didn't have any reaction. However, this performance didn't arouse the slightest bit of pity in Noah's heart. Looking at the densely packed Reaper's shadow that seemed to cover the sky, Noah spat out such a sentence. "I will never forgive you," as soon as his voice fell. "For victory, come to me." The long-awaited spirit of speech finally saw the light of day again from Noah's mouth. Under the spirit of speech that resounded throughout the entire world, Noah's body exploded with violent power. "Undying sun, shining steed, under my command, bring the wheel of light that burns everything to me." That was a brand new spirit of speech. Because the authority that Noah used was no longer the power that he seized from God. Instead, it had undergone transformation and sublimation, fusing with his inner world as one. It originated from the power of the world. At this moment, the power of the white horse that Noah summoned was no other power but the sun in the world that belonged to his own soul origin. It was a real sun. A sun that belonged only to Noah. Therefore, under Noah's spirit of speech, a sun appeared behind him and gradually rose into the air. Neigh. A horse's neigh that seemed to have traveled from the distant past through time and space resounded. In the dazzling sun, an incomparably handsome white horse seemed to have galloped from the center of the sun. It stepped on the void and galloped all the way to this world. Immediately, the white horse suddenly stopped, straightened its front legs, and neighed loudly. Neigh. The high-pitched neigh echoed throughout the entire space. Go. Noah coldly ordered. Neigh. The white horse's eyes flashed with a spiritual light, and then it charged forward. With a bang, the flames from the sun ignited on the white horse's body. The moment the flames ignited, an astonishingly high temperature swept through the entire world. Chi 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 chi. With a strange sound, the entire world seemed to be ignited. It was roasted by the terrifying heat, and it actually emitted smoke. At this moment, the space was distorted by the high temperature. At this moment, the heavens and earth were burning because of the white horse. The white horse neighed like this, and like a stream of light that soared into the sky, it violently shot upwards with a brilliant flame. Without a sound. Its speed was astonishing. The endless shadows of the Grim Reaper didn't even have time to react before the white horse carrying the terrifying flames rushed over. Then, without any hesitation, it crashed into them. Dong! A commotion comparable to the explosion of a star suddenly appeared in this world. One could only see that in the dense wave of shadows of death, a burst of flames had completely exploded. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an overwhelming sea of flames that instantly engulfed the endless shadows of death. The flames were white. That kind of white gave people the feeling of a divine light. It was impossible to imagine how terrifying its power was. It was precisely those flames that engulfed the phantoms of the Grim Reaper one by one and incinerated them into nothingness in an instant. Chapter 2187. At this moment, the entire space of worlds was attacked by a terrifying heat, causing this pure white world to distort. The scenery was constantly swaying, looking extremely frightening. And in the sky of this pure white world, the terrifying white flames were still spreading and burning, engulfing all of the shadows of death, instantly incinerating them into nothingness. On the ground, Gaia and Alea were completely stunned as they watched this scene from afar. Looking at the shadows that could destroy the world being incinerated into ashes by the terrifying flames, the two great restraints were both happy and shocked. The last time Noah faced the shadow of the Grim Reaper, he had gone all out and used half of the 10 clones of his authority, but still couldn't do anything to the shadow of the Grim Reaper. The shadow of the Grim Reaper's overwhelming and violent manner had crushed him like dry weeds, and he had almost lost his life. At that time, if Gaia and Alea hadn't prepared a backup plan, Noah would have died without a doubt. Now, Noah had finally undergone a complete transformation. Dealing with the shadow of death that he had almost given up all hope in the past was actually so easy. Moreover, Noah clearly hadn't used all of his strength. The two great restraints knew that once Noah had undergone a complete transformation, he would definitely be able to deal with the calamity that threatened the myriad worlds. However, this was only based on the fact that they were on the same level. In Gaia and Alea's view, even if Noah had undergone a complete transformation, he would only be on the same level as the enemy. Whether or not he could obtain the final victory was still uncertain. But now, Noah's performance was so shocking. How could Gaia and Alea not be happy? How could they not be shocked? However, this was Gaia and Alea taking things for granted. Admittedly, after Noah had undergone a complete transformation, he had become completely different. However, it wasn't to the point where he could easily defeat the enemy that threatened the myriad worlds. The reason why he could be so powerful was because these shadows were only tentacles. There was only one true enemy. Only that guy was the real enemy. Hence, when the two great restraints watched the monstrous sea of fire in midair gradually burning the Grim Reaper's tide into nothingness, Noah suddenly raised his head and looked in another direction. Buzz! As the air trembled, the space in the direction Noah was looking at suddenly seemed to be polluted, gradually turning into a dark red color. Gee! The crimson space suddenly let out a cracking sound, and a crack appeared. From the crack, a dark red liquid began to seep out. The blood that seeped out twisted and turned into red reapers in a short instant. They held crimson scythes in their hands, and red dots that looked like eyes flickered under their crimson robes. The newly born red Grim Reapers once again formed a dense army, like a wave, covering the entire sky. Gee! An indescribable cry suddenly appeared from the Grim Reaper's tide, turning into a sound wave that could be seen with the naked eye, and reverberated in all directions. Gaia and Alea couldn't help but cover their ears due to the unpleasant shriek. Even the remaining feathers on their bodies started to tremble as if they were in great discomfort. Noah couldn't help but frown, and his gaze toward the Grim Reaper's tide became impatient. Tentacles are really tentacles. Even if they are cut off, they can still be regenerated when they want to. Gaia and Alea's guess was indeed correct. The red Grim Reaper that had been endangering the entire, between the worlds, only had some simple consciousness, but it was controlled by a clear consciousness. The reason for this was that the existence of the shadows was just a tentacle, and the second was that the shadows themselves were simply spawn bodies. Just like the human final trial in the box, Az-Dakaha, who was known as the three-headed dragon, once he bled, the blood would turn into a body and become the claws and teeth of the three-headed dragon. It's just that, for the current me, these tentacles, no matter how many there are of no use. Noah's gaze was directly cast toward the crimson space. He no longer paid attention to the red Grim Reapers as before, but turned a blind eye to them. Gee! Perhaps the simple consciousness of the shadows made them aware of Noah's disregard, but they let out an even more ear-piercing cry, as if they were angry, and screamed. In response, Noah just glanced in the direction of the Grim Reaper's tide, and suddenly waved his hand. In the distance, the white sea of fire that was still burning suddenly stagnated, and then suddenly soared, turning into a monstrous wave of fire, and rushed down at an astonishing speed. The terrifyingly high temperature hit from the sky, causing the Grim Reaper's army to let out a cry, turn around, and face upward. They only had time to make this move, and the monstrous wave of fire had already rushed down, engulfing the Grim Reaper's tide that covered the sky and the sun. The endless Grim Reaper's army immediately followed the path of their former companions, and before they could even scream, they were burned to ashes by the terrifying white flames, and in the end, nothing was left. As if to prove the truth of Noah's words, the endless Grim Reaper's army could not resist at all. In the blink of an eye, they were all burned up, as if they had never existed in the first place. Then, Noah's heart moved, and the overwhelming white flames immediately surrounded the crimson space. The crimson space seemed to have sensed the danger, and suddenly trembled, blooming with an extremely dazzling bloody light. The moment the bloody light shone, the white flames that surrounded the crimson space froze in the space. Immediately, the crimson bloody light seemed to have eroded the flames, and the white flames were dyed red little by little. "Want to occupy my flames?" Noah snorted coldly. "Don't even think about it." As soon as the words fell, an astonishing energy storm burst out from Noah's body, turning into waves of invisible waves, and poured into the white sea of fire that covered the entire sky. Boom! The white sea of fire immediately rose explosively and expanded countless times in an instant. To put it bluntly, the current sea of fire was already as big as a real sun, and it could burn the earth to ashes in an instant. Under such power, the flames that had been eroded into a dazzling red solidified again, and little by little, transformed into a sacred white color again. Burn for me. Under Noah's control, a terrifyingly high temperature swept out like the sun, gradually engulfing and burning the bloody light that bloomed from the crimson space. Hum 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 hum. The crimson space suddenly trembled violently, and it was unknown whether it was surprised or angry. However, whether it was surprised or angry, it didn't matter. "I can see that the crimson world you are in can't move at all, and you can't get out of it." Noah stared at the crimson space. "Otherwise, you wouldn't have needed to create so many shadows to attack the world, and you wouldn't have been able to watch your tentacles being blocked by a barrier for so long, giving me so much time for nothing." Presumably, the other party was also very clear that in the space between worlds, only Noah could pose a threat to him. Therefore, after discovering Noah's existence, the other party sent a large number of shadows of the Grim Reaper to chase after Noah, but they were blocked by the barrier that Gaia and Alea had already prepared. If the other party really understood the threat of Noah, then he shouldn't have stayed in the Crimson World to watch the show, and watch Noah get the time to transform, and let the shadows be blocked. Therefore, the only explanation was that the other party couldn't get out of the Crimson World. The previous attack that destroyed the barrier was probably prepared by the other party for a long time in the Crimson World, and after calculating the right time, he immediately released it, crossing the barriers of time, space, and the world to finally destroy the barrier. The crimson space that suddenly appeared in front of him was just a temporary passage that had been opened, and it seemed that there was no way to cross the barrier, otherwise, it wouldn't have taken until now to open it. "It's too late to get rid of me now. Just obediently stay in that world and wait for me to find you." After saying that, Noah pointed his finger, and a monstrous white flame immediately swarmed up, engulfing the crimson space and burning it to ashes. Chapter 2188. After incinerating the crimson space, the monstrous flame seemed to have transformed into the sky, quietly burning above and covering the entire sky. At this time, Noah turned around and slowly floated down, landing on the ground. Little Noah. Noah. Gaia and Alea hurriedly came to Noah, looking at Noah with eyes full of joy. Obviously, the two restraints were also happy with Noah's growth. It wasn't just Gaia and Alea. Even the remaining feathers fluttered around Noah's body like little birds. They hovered around Noah and constantly released happy emotions. However, Noah couldn't feel happy. Seeing that only a few dozen feathers were left in the endless pure white space, Noah's mood was very complicated. Although he didn't see the whole process with his own eyes, Noah could still guess what happened. After all, Noah had just completed the evolution of his inner world and opened his eyes. The scene of the worlds exploding in front of him, turning into a barrier to block the incoming shadow, was directly imprinted in Noah's eyes. Seeing this scene, no matter how stupid Noah was, he could guess what happened. To stall for time. Noah's mood was very complicated. If he hadn't requested for Gaia and Alea to allow him to return home and see his family, he definitely wouldn't have had to let his world self-destruct in order to buy time to complete the evolution of his inner world. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but feel a little guilty in his heart. Who knows if the worlds could also sense Noah's emotions and felt the guilt in Noah's heart. The feathers emitting a soft white light were like comforting words, gently circling around Noah's body. Seeing this scene, Gaia and Alea seemed to have guessed something. Looking at each other, they both cast their gazes on Noah. "Little Noah, you can't think too much," Gaia advised. "Between making you feel apprehensive and perplexed and temporarily sacrificing yourself to buy time, if we have to choose which is more important, then whether it's me or Alea, we will choose the former without hesitation. If you fight with apprehension and perplexed, you will lose in the end. That will be a true extinction," Alea said. "But sacrificing yourself to buy time is only temporary. As long as you can obtain victory in the end, then sooner or later, you will be able to repair the self-sacrificing worlds. Which is more important, I believe you understand." "I know." Noah took a deep breath, suppressed the emotions in his heart, and bitterly smiled. "I just feel a little heartache." "We feel the same as you." Gaia's youthful face also showed a trace of bitterness. "After all, I'm the one who made this decision." "Me too." Alea's face was calm. "So, you don't have to feel guilty. If this is necessary, then we can share all the pain for you." "I know." Noah's bitter expression turned into a smile. "So, I've always been grateful to you. It's our honor." Gaia's bitter expression also turned into a playful one. "To be able to make the reincarnation of a starting world look at us like this, as a restraining force, we can be considered outstanding. Since the millions of worlds chose us to be your guides, we are considered to be a community with a shared destiny," Alea looked at Noah and said. "Although we can only help to this extent, no matter the outcome, we will watch your battle to the end." Noah nodded heavily. At this time, Gaia and Alea finally had the time to carefully observe Noah. Upon a closer look, Noah was very different from before. This difference did not refer to the change in Noah's appearance, nor was it a change in Noah's temperament. Noah was still Noah. However, looking at this Noah, who did not seem to have changed at all, the two restraining forces had a strange feeling. The feeling was the same as before Noah's transformation, when he faced the complete transformation of the world's authority, sovereignty, and grace. Unreachable. It was the same feeling. Undoubtedly, Noah was standing before them, but Gaia and Alea had a feeling that he was unreachable. The reason for this feeling was very clear to Gaia and Alea. There was only one reason. Noah's existence had been raised to a level that the restraining forces could not touch. Facing Noah was like facing an entire world for the two restraining forces. Even if this world's existence was in the form of a human, in essence, Noah was no longer human. At the very least, Noah's soul had become a world of its own. A world that had undergone rebirth. Therefore, Gaia and Alea were able to discover it. In Noah's body, which looked no different from a normal person, there was a feather in his heart. In the world of Elven Messenger's sword dance, there was also a feather in Liena Subble's heart. However, that feather was incomplete, only half of it. On the other hand, the feather in Noah's heart was a complete feather. Furthermore, this feather was slightly different from ordinary feathers. How was it different? Gold. Both Gaia and Alea were surprised. That's right. The feather in Noah's heart was a resplendent gold. How can it be gold? Gaia asked in confusion. Undoubtedly, the main body of the world is a white feather. It's not just the world. Even the space between the worlds that accommodates the world is pure white. The imaginative power that is the origin of the world is also white. Even the authority, sovereignty, and favor after the transformation are all white. Alea frowned. White is the color that represents the world. How can the world in your body become gold? Hearing Gaia and Alea's words, Noah smiled and said, since the color that represents the world is white, then how can the disaster that destroys thousands of worlds be red? When this was said, Gaia and Alea were immediately stunned. In that case, I have never noticed this problem. Gaia suddenly said. Why would the existence that destroys the world be red? Because it is no longer a simple world. In essence, it is more like a disaster in the space between worlds. Alea pondered. In other words, the essence of the world in my body is the same. It is no longer a world that is purely used to nurture life and miracles. Noah said with a smile. The original world no longer exists. Now, it has been reborn in the form of my soul. The nurturing of life and miracles no longer follows the laws of nature. Instead, it is decided by my will. Therefore, this world is dyed in my color. Naturally, it is not pure white. I see. Gaia and Alea expressed their understanding at the same time. Nurturing life and miracles was the instinct of the world. However, Noah's world and his body no longer followed this instinct. Instead, it was decided by Noah's will. Although it was still a world in nature, its essence was somewhat different. Therefore, Noah's world and his body transformed into a resplendent gold color. Similarly, the dark red world's essence was more inclined towards disaster. What it produced was the shadow of death that was equivalent to tentacles. It only had a simple consciousness and was being controlled. It couldn't even be considered a living being, so naturally, it couldn't be considered pure and untainted. As a result, it became an ominous bloody color. And from these colors, one could more or less see the differences between each world. Therefore, the white fantasy world was the most basic way of existence. The golden original world and the red disaster world had an essence that was different from other worlds. Therefore, they both had the power to interfere with other worlds. The fact that I can destroy those red reaper-like tentacles is the proof. Noah raised one hand, looked at it, and slowly clenched it into a fist. The feeling of powerlessness like last time no longer exists. Now, I have the power to destroy everything. Saying so, Noah turned around, raised his head, and looked above the blazing sea of fire. He spoke softly. Now, I am ready to go. Chapter 2189. Ready to depart. Noah's words caused Gaia and Alea to be stunned on the spot before they came to their senses. What did this mean? It meant that Noah was preparing to attack the Crimson World and directly confront the Eye. Is this okay? Gaia couldn't help but ask. That is the enemy's world after all. If you recklessly attack, you will most likely be suppressed. But, attacking the disaster world is a must. Noah naturally understood Gaia's concern, but he shook his head. Just like how I control the starting world of my rebirth, the disaster world is also controlled by the Eye. However, our forms of existence are different. Noah was moving around as a human, while the world was fused into his body and existed in the deepest part of his body. Ai's existence was the complete opposite of Noah's. She was inside a world, and the world played the role of protecting the queen bee's hive. Because of this, the existence of the Eye can't come out of its own world, and that world can't move freely. Perhaps this is the price it has to pay to get the power to destroy other worlds, Noah said, looking at the sky. If you want to defeat the Eye, you have to enter that world. Could it be that you can't directly attack the disaster world from within the world boundary? Alea asked. With your current strength, if you attack the world, you can already cause damage to it, right? Indeed, I can directly attack the world now. Noah still shook his head. But just now, you should have seen it. When I used the flames of the white horse to attack the crimson tunnel opened by the other party's power seeped out from the tunnel and attempted to seize control of my flames. I think, even if I directly attacked the disaster world, I would still be met with a certain degree of resistance. There would be no difference at all. Also, I have a suspicion. Noah turned his gaze and looked at Gaia and Alea. Since the I's existence is the complete opposite of mine, then the conditions to defeat it could also be reversed. Now, with the support of the inner world, Noah was equivalent to a true immortal body. With the protection of the sword's protection spell, Noah was almost immune to all physical attacks. Even if his body was injured, he could instantly extract a large amount of life force from his inner world to heal himself. Even if his body was crushed to pieces, he could recover in the blink of an eye. There was only one way to defeat the current Noah. Attacking the soul. That was to attack Noah's inner world. As long as the world equivalent to Noah's soul was destroyed, Noah would die. But the existence of the I could be reversed. That was to say, if one attacked a world that was protected from the outside, even if it caused damage, it could recover in an instant. Only by attacking the I protected by the world of disaster would they be able to obtain victory. Perhaps this is the reason why I is unable to come out of its own world. Noah stared at Gaia and Alea. So, I have to go. Hearing this, Gaia and Alea both fell silent. This was because if Noah planned to take the initiative to attack the world of disaster where the I was, the two great restraints would not be able to follow him. Even if they followed, they would not be of any help and might even become a burden. Just like what he said before. Noah really had to fight on his own. Thinking about this, Gaia and Alea bitterly smiled. It seems that even if we stop you, it will be useless. Gaia helplessly said. It should be said that we have no reason to stop you. Alea sighed. Originally, the reason why Noah was born was to resist the world of disaster. Now, Noah had finally reached this step. As Noah's guide, Gaia and Alea naturally had no reason to stop Noah. Next, Noah would head to the final battlefield alone to put an end to everything. Then, at this time, what could the two great restraints do for Noah? Thinking about this, Gaia and Alea suddenly revealed a smile. Hey, little Noah. Gaia mysteriously said to Noah. Before you leave, Alea and I have a gift for you. Gift? Noah was startled and asked in confusion. What gift? There are two gifts. Alea concisely said. First, I'll let you see the first one. The instant Gaia and Alea finished speaking, among the few dozen feathers around them, a portion of them suddenly flew out and arrived in front of Noah. Clang! In the next second, the feathers that flew in front of Noah bloomed with light and transformed into light and shadow. Like a screen, they appeared in front of Noah's eyes. This is... Noah looked at the scene on the screen and was stunned. The scene that appeared in front of Noah was not unfamiliar to Noah. At least, in the scene that appeared in front of him, Noah saw people or things that were extremely familiar to him. Thus, Noah understood. The worlds in front of him were all worlds that he had been to before. Fairy's Tale. Black Bullet. Absolute Dual Blade. Night of the Magician. God Slayer. Demon High School. Fate. Is there a mistake in seeking a chance encounter in the dungeon? Sword Dance of the Elves. King of the Undead. Problem children come from another world. There were a total of 11 worlds, all of which were worlds that Noah had visited before. Of course, although it was said to be 11 worlds, it was more accurate to say that it was 10 worlds. After all, Night of the Magician and Fate belong to the same world, shaped moon. I don't know if they considered your feelings, but these 10 worlds all remained and did not self-destruct. Gaia smiled at Noah. Among them, there was the world that Alea and I were in. Thanks to this, we survived. If the world that we were in self-destructed, we would have disappeared immediately. Alea nodded. And now, the scenes that you see are the things that are happening in each world. Noah heard Gaia and Alea's words. However, Noah's eyes were completely attracted by the scenes in front of him. In the world of Black Bullet, in Fairyland, Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, Yanzhu, and Rentaro were busy as usual. Even Aster and Athena were involved, as if they were carrying out some mission. Only Orpheus and Lilith stayed in Tokyo, accompanying the Son of Heaven and protecting his safety in the Saint residence. In the world of Absolute Double-Edged Blades, Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Tachibana, and Gaia were still studying in Haolang Academy. Like quarrelsome lovers, they played and teased each other all day long. Like ordinary high school students, they were full of smiles. In the world of The Night of the Sorcerer, Qingzi was no longer in the manor house. Instead, he was traveling outside. Only Yu Zhu had been guarding Sano City. She quietly stayed in the manor house, perfectly reflecting the mystery of being a witch. In the world of God Slayer, Erica, Yuri, Liliana, and a group of girls were having afternoon tea with Alice in a mansion in England. In the world of Demon Academy, Liaz, Junai, Aisha, Kitten, Genova, Irina, Label, Los Vias, Gasper, and Yudu were still living a good life in the academy. Occasionally, they would go on missions with Sidi's family led by Kana to protect the world's peace. In the world of Fate, Rinasaka and Tamatosaka were also in school. Altoria and Medusa, as bodyguards, actually went along with them. Even Ilya went to join in the fun, causing chaos in the school every day. In the world of Seeking a Chance Encounter in the Underground City, Hestia's family and Loki's family lived a life where they did not interact with each other. Occasionally, Hestia and Alice would run into each other. One had a fierce face, while the other had a confused face. It was very funny. In the world of Sword Dance of the Elves, Lotus, Claire, Linley, Phaeana, and Alice wandered around the world together, looking for the traces of the other elf kings who were liberated by Noah. In the world of King of the Undead, a group of guardians led by Yair Bade loyally maintained the operation of the entire Nasaric underground tomb. They did not relax for a single day. In the world of Problem Children Come from Another World, Letitia and Pest completed the work of the hierarchy rulers every day. Sometimes, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, Yao, and the others would also help, but in the end, they would only add to the chaos and be attacked by Black Rabbit's paper fan. In the world of Fairy's Tale, in the guild, the companions were fooling around as usual, as if they were not affected by Noah at all. Or it could be said that they believed that Noah would definitely come back victorious. There was no change at all. Only Mira, Lisanna, Wendy, and Yukino and the other girls showed nostalgic and loving expressions from time to time. It was self-evident who they were thinking about. Looking at the scenes and the familiar people, Noah could not help but smile. Chapter 2190. 10 Worlds. 11 Scenes. Noah looked at them one by one and memorized them in his heart. He felt incomparably at ease. The people who appeared on the light screen were all very important to Noah. There were close relatives. He had a close friend. He had subordinates. He had companions. Each and every person and scene made Noah fall into the memories of the past. He recalled his efforts to learn magic in the world of Fairy's Tale. He recalled his struggle to protect his children in the world of The Dark Bullet. He recalled the life in the world of Absolute Double-Edged for the sake of enjoying the school life. He recalled the interaction between the two witches in the world of The Night of the Sorcerers in order to find the fragment. He recalled the battle for power in the world of the God Slayer. He recalled his exploration in the world of Demon High School in order to understand the various races. He recalled the battle for the Holy Grail in the world of Fate. He recalled the time when he went deep into the labyrinth to train his ability value in the world of Seeking a Chance Encounter in the Underground City. He recalled the compromise he made in order to get a clue in the world of the elf messenger's sword dance. He recalled the probing he had done in order to solve puzzles in the world of the undead king. He also recalled the game of bestowing gifts for the sake of community in the world of problem children come from another world. Those memories were vivid in his mind. Along with the 11 scenes of the 10 worlds in front of him, they flashed through Noah's mind one by one. At the same time, in these memories, there were also some girls who had more or less left footprints in Noah's heart. In the world of Fairy's Tale, Mira, Lisanna, Wendy, and Snow. In the world of the Black Bullet, Sage Tianzi, Mugging, Hina, Xiaoshi, and Yenju. Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Tachibana, and Koya in the world of Absolute Dual Blades. Aoko and Yuju from the world of the Night of the Magi. Alice, Erica, Yuri, Liliana, and Huina in the world of the God Slayer. In the world of Demon High School, Lais, Junai, Kitten, Aisha, Labelle, Genova, and Irina. In the world of Fate, Rinanaka, Atsushi Sakura, Altoria, Medusa, and Ilia. In the world of Seeking a Chance Encounter in the Dungeon Is There Something Wrong, Hestia and Aze in the world of Elven Sword Dance, Lotus, Claire, Linley, Fayanna, and Alice were there. In the world of the Undead King, Yael, Zaisha, and Annabelle. In the world of Problem Children Come from Another World, there were Letitia, Pest, Kuyuki Asaka, Haruai Bayahara, and Vera. Apart from that, there were also the contract targets that were always by his side: Aster, Athena, Orpheus, and Lilith. As these memories flashed through his mind, Noah actually had a trace of understanding. The understanding of the intersection between the existence of the world and one's own existence. Here, a single feather represented a world. And these worlds were all worlds that only existed in fantasy. What Noah had done so far was to leave his footprints and his legend in this fantasy world. However, this was definitely not the end of it. Because after leaving his footprints, Noah still had to follow these footprints back. My legend doesn't end here. Noah's gaze slowly swept across the scenes displayed on the light screens. It was as though he was narrating to the familiar figures in the scenes. He murmured softly. So, I have to go back. At this moment, in Noah's heart, an unprecedented surge of heat was surging. That was Noah's impulse, and also Noah's request. There was only one thought left in Noah's mind. I miss you. Therefore, Noah must win, return to those worlds, and reunite with those familiar characters. In this battle, I can only win, I can't lose. This thought, in the strongest form, plunged into Noah's heart. It would turn into a driving force. That was a power that even the world couldn't derive. With this power, Noah would have nothing to fear. Once upon a time, Lucy had said this to Noah. Hades said that in this world, there is only one magic, that is the origin of all magic. If this world really has the so-called one and only magic, then I think that magic is definitely love. A magic that anyone who obtains can become powerful. If this was really the case, then at this moment, Noah had obtained this one and only magic. Noah believed that this magic would lead him to victory. Thank you, Gaia, Alea. Noah smiled at the two great restraints. Thanks to you, I finally know what I should do. Hearing Noah's words and seeing Noah's unprecedentedly bright expression, Gaia and Alea smiled. It seems that our gift has satisfied you. Gaia's tone was a little excited. To be able to eliminate little Noah's last worries is really good. The current you will definitely be invincible, Alea said in a serious tone. At least, that's what we believe. I know. Noah nodded and said. Then, what's the second gift? Hearing this, Gaia and Alea exchanged glances. The second gift. Gaia deliberately mystified. It will take a bit of effort to give it to you. It depends on whether Noah is willing to cooperate or not. Alea directly said. In short, first squat down and then close your eyes. Squat down. Close my eyes. Noah was somewhat suspicious, but he still did as he was told. He half squatted down and closed his eyes. This time, he only closed his eyes for a second. Chirp, following an extremely soft sound, Noah clearly felt it. His cheeks were pressed against two extremely soft objects. Noah opened his eyes in shock. He saw Gaia and Alea standing on both sides of Noah with their eyes closed, leaving a kiss on Noah's cheeks. You too. Noah unconsciously stood up, covering his cheeks with an extremely shocked expression. How is it? Gaia smiled mischievously. Are you satisfied with this gift? There's no reason not to give a blessing to a man who is about to enter the battlefield. Alea also showed an extremely rare smile. Although it's not as good as the protection from the infinite worlds, the blessing from the restraints will bring you victory. The words from the two restraints made the shock on Noah's face fade away and turn into helplessness. You too. Noah said helplessly. Didn't you call yourself my mother? What? Gaia put her hands on her waist. Can't a mother kiss her own son? Besides, that's not the most important thing. Alea met Noah's gaze and smiled. The most important thing is, are you satisfied with this blessing? Satisfied? Was the answer to this question still needed to be said? Facing the suppressive force of Gaia and Alea, the two large-scale moon worlds, Noah suddenly smiled and said, satisfied, and I can't be more satisfied. With this blessing, I can't lose no matter what. Yes. Can't lose. Whether it was for Gaia, Alea, or his close friends and family in the various worlds, Noah couldn't lose. Then. Noah glanced at Gaia and then at Alea. I'll be back soon. After leaving these words, Noah suddenly turned around and his body turned into a stream of light, rushing into the sky and flying towards the horizon. High up in the sky, the sea of flames that covered the entire sky like a defensive line seemed to have received some kind of order and suddenly split open, forming a passage. The streak of light that soared into the sky flew through the tunnel and disappeared into the horizon. On the ground, Gaia and Alea watched as Noah left. They watched as the separated sea of flames returned to its original state and didn't say anything for a long time. Around them, feathers spun back and forth around Gaia and Alea as if they were dancing. It was an exceptionally beautiful sight. If this dance had to be named, then there was only one suitable name for it. The Dance of Blessing. A dance that resembled a ritual and a prayer, presented by the various worlds, suddenly appeared in this space. For a long time, it didn't calm down. Chapter 2191. In the pure white world, Noah, who had turned into a stream of light, flew all the way to the sky like a meteor, causing the atmosphere to tremble wherever he passed. With Noah's current strength, it was almost easy for him to reach the speed of light, and even surpassing the speed of light was just a small matter. In fact, with Noah's experience of opening up a world, if he were to delve into space-related abilities, it would be easy for him to research methods such as teleportation and space jump. Unfortunately, there was not enough time for Noah to delve into space-related abilities. However, Noah's authority had already undergone a transformation, and the Phoenix incarnation had the ability to fully control the flow of time, which was very cheating. Once this incarnation was used, it was no different from teleportation and space jump. When he had just completed the transformation of the inner world, he opened his eyes and saw the scene of the worlds exploding one after another. When he attacked in rage, Noah's movement was almost no different from teleportation, which was the result of using the Phoenix. Now, with the blessing of a world-level ability value, coupled with the continuous supply of energy from the inner world, even if his authority also transformed into a world-level ability value, Noah could still use all 10 incarnations at the same time without any pressure. Therefore, at this moment, Noah used all the abilities of all 10 incarnations on himself. Whoosh! In the sound of breaking air, Noah seemed to have disappeared directly, without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already high up in the sky. Who knew how far away? Maintaining this terrifying movement speed that was no different from teleportation, Noah raised his head and looked up. In the next second, Noah saw his destination. Dong dong dong. In the distant sky, a crimson space was beating rhythmically like an active heart. Not knowing if it was aware of Noah's arrival, that crimson space trembled violently, causing circles of invisible ripples to spread out. Wherever the ripples passed, the space was distorted. If any life form broke into it, it would be crushed directly by the distorted space, like a hemp rope being trampled to pieces. Are you trying to stop me from moving forward? Noah murmured. Is it that easy? As he muttered to himself, Noah slowly closed his eyes. Since the opponent is also a world, then I will create a weapon that can cut it open. With this idea, the first weapon that appeared in Noah's mind was naturally only one. It was a weapon made up of 3 cylindrical blades. The body of the sword was black in color, and it was covered with red vein-like patterns. It had the ability to split heaven and earth, the highest level relic that could cut open the world, Good Separation Sword, EA. What Noah needed to do was to use the weapon refinement ability to create this relic. However, it's not enough to just rely on that relic's power. Even though the ability of weapon refinement was completely different from before, according to Noah's current ability value, the Good Separation Sword, EA, that he created would be able to surpass its original form, but it was still not enough to deal with a world. So, I need to make it even more powerful. At this moment, in the deepest part of Noah's mind, a stone plate that was connected to 10 patterns suddenly emitted a dazzling light. At the same time, in Noah's mind, the 3 cylindrical blades that formed a strange weapon began to change. Just like a blueprint that had been improved, the relic named Obedient Parting Sword, EA, was reforged in Noah's mind in the form of an image. More powerful, sharper, under the condition that it retained its original characteristics, Noah made this relic into a weapon of another level. Immediately, Noah activated the ability of weapon refinement. Clang! Along with the dazzling light, in one of Noah's hands, a dazzling light suddenly appeared and gradually condensed. In the light, a weapon gradually began to take shape, and was tightly held in Noah's hands. It had a sword hilt that was as bright as gold. It had 3 blades that were stacked together like a silkworm cocoon. It had a sword body that was as sharp as a knife. It had a sword aura that seemed to be able to cut through everything. It was a weapon that was no different from the Good Separation Sword, EA. The difference was that the blade of the sword was not cylindrical with 3 rotating blades, but an actual sharp blade. The red vein-like pattern still covered the dark sword body. It was still the Good Separation Sword, EA. However, it was a weapon that was many levels higher than its original form. Using the ability of weapon refinement, with the Good Separation Sword, EA, that has the ability to cut through the world as its original form, and with the authority of Storm, Giant, White Horse, Dragon Emperor, Herd, Priest, Phoenix, Elf, Thunder, and Warrior, a total of 10 incarnations, it becomes the strongest weapon. Such a weapon, the moment it was completely formed, a wave that caused the space to distort turned into ripples that reverberated from above, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. In addition to the increase in skills, ability value, and development ability, as well as the energy in the inner world, if you can block it, then block it for me. As soon as he finished speaking, along with another trembling sound, the Good Separation Sword, EA, that was tightly held in Noah's hand was surrounded by a storm-like energy. Immediately after, Noah suddenly stabbed out with the sword. Clang! Amidst the incomparably crisp sword hum, an extremely cold sword light suddenly shot out. That sword light was like the most dazzling ray of light in the world. Just the tip of that sword light was comparable to the size of a star. That sword light, with a long tail of light, pierced through the entire space. That sword light, as if it had existed since a long time ago, had an ancient and terrifying aura. This was the full power of Noah's attack. A terrifying attack with enough power to destroy a part of the world. This attack met the invisible ripple that distorted the entire space and forcefully sliced through it. Pooh! A sound like a rubber ball being pierced rang out. The huge cold sword light slashed through space, time, and the invisible ripples that came from a part of the world, violently destroying the power that distorted the entire space. Immediately after, the cold sword light did not lose its momentum, and like a comet, it shot towards the crimson space. Poochie! The indestructible sword light pierced through the barrier of the crimson space without any hindrance, and opened the entrance to the disaster world. Noah, who had turned into a stream of light, accelerated without any hesitation. With an astonishing speed, he instantly crossed an immeasurable distance, entered the entrance of the crimson space, and broke into that world. Only at this moment did the scarlet-red space finally start trembling, and it seemed to be furious and helpless. Immediately after, the broken barrier began to repair at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than a second, it was completely restored to its original state. The crimson space was still like an ominous sky, sitting high in the sky between the worlds, slowly exuding a heart-palpitating aura and pressure. No one knew that in this crimson world, a war of the highest level that could sweep through thousands of worlds was ongoing. This was an extremely ominous world. If Noah's inner world was a pure white space at the beginning, then this disaster world was a crimson space. Here, there was nothing. There was no universe. There was no planet. There was no galaxy. There was no life. Seeing a world like this, no matter who it was, they would treat it as a place. Hell. In fact, this place was no different from hell. Because, in this boundless crimson world, there were countless red reapers that floated back and forth like ghosts. Jijijijijiji, when Noah invaded this crimson world, an ear-piercing shriek that made one's heart tremble resounded, echoing in the entire crimson world. Chapter 2192. How uncomfortable would it be to hear the sound of fingernails scraping against glass? Not many people would be able to answer this question. However, if someone was here and heard this shrill cry, they would definitely think that compared to this sound, the former sounded better than the most popular music. The sound of fingernails scraping against glass would at most make people feel uncomfortable. However, at this very moment, the shrill cry that resounded in the world of crimson was enough to tear apart the nerves of an ordinary person, puncture their eardrums, crush their heart, and crush their brain in an instant. Even Noah, although he did not suffer any injuries, felt extremely uncomfortable. Of course, this kind of cry was purely used to disgust people. The countless shadows of death that were densely packed like locusts all over the world of crimson let out screams that were either angry or happy. They held huge sides that seemed to be condensed from blood in their hands and rushed towards Noah's direction. Walala! In an instant, the entire world of crimson seemed to have turned into a boiling bottom of the sea, producing an intense reaction. The countless shadows of death turned into monstrous waves that surged toward Noah, who had suddenly entered this world, like a surging tide that couldn't be seen with one's naked eye. This scene was simply like pouring red dye into a pure swimming pool, causing the entire pool to be dyed red at an astonishing speed. Countless shadows of death that were darker than the crimson world rushed towards Noah's direction, directly engulfing the figure of Noah, who had an uncomfortable expression on his face. Unfortunately, this scene only lasted for a moment. With my spirit of words technique, let the world show justice. This incantation is eloquent and powerful, killing the enemy without fail. At the very center of the densely packed shadows of death, a bright crimson light that dispelled all the ominous crimson color in the surroundings lit up, illuminating the entire world. In the next moment, the center of the light suddenly shook, and countless sharp swords shot out. They were pure white swords that were engraved with mysterious and profound characters. As long as you know your opponent's background, you will be able to kill all your enemies with the sword of words, a warrior. After transforming into a world-level authority, this clone could even have effects on worlds. Like a flash of light, the sharp sword slashed across the shadow of death. Poochie 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 poochie. Amidst a series of ripping sounds, the shadows of the Grim Reapers were instantly sliced into two by the swords of spirit speech that shot out explosively. Countless swords of words rampaged through the crimson world, flying back and forth, slaying the shadows of the Grim Reaper one after another. In an instant, more than half of the densely packed shadows of the Grim Reaper were slaughtered. As a result, the entire crimson world instantly turned into a world of swords and death. It was as if there were two factions at war, with conflicts occurring in every corner. On one side, there were countless shadows of death. On one side, there were countless swords that covered the sky and covered the earth. The existence of the two factions were like warriors, opposing each other with equal harshness, fighting in every corner of the crimson world. Poochie. Sometimes, the swords of spirit speech killed the shadow of death, piercing through the shadow of death's body like a laser, causing the shadow of death to disappear with a sharp cry. Clang. Sometimes, the shadow of death waved its huge scythe, bouncing off the swords of spirit speech. Then, countless shadows of death pounced on the swords of spirit speech, waving their blades together and shattering the swords of spirit speech. The entire disaster world had completely turned into a battlefield between the swords of spirit speech and the shadow of death, turning the originally hellish scenery into a purgatory. Although there was no smell of blood, there were flashes of swords and screams everywhere, just like a nightmare. However, in general, the swords of spirit speech had the absolute advantage. After all, Noah already knew the true nature of the shadow's existence. He knew that they were just tentacles created by the eye, similar to the three-headed dragon's body. In a situation where he knew the truth, the swords of spirit speech were almost invincible, and the shadows of death were no match for them. However, both sides had an endless advantage in terms of numbers. Noah could continuously create swords of spirit speech. The enemy could continuously create the shadows of death. Therefore, in this side of the world, the conflict had never stopped. The swords of spirit speech and the shadows of death were completely entangled, killing each other in every corner of the crimson battlefield. In this war, if the commanders of both sides did not take action, then there would be no moment of peace. Noah knew this, and so did the enemy. Therefore, Noah closed his eyes and completely expanded his sensing ability, covering this side of the world. It was not until the world in his body was born that Noah realized that his sensing ability was actually the embodiment of the world's will. The world could sense anything that was happening in any corner of its body. This kind of sensing was an ability of the world itself. As the reincarnation of the original world, Noah could only roughly use this sensing ability to sense hostility, malice, and killing intent in the surroundings when the world that was equivalent to his soul had not been repaired and was still in a broken state. Moreover, the range was quite limited. Now that the world in his body had completed its transformation, and his sensing ability had been fully restored, Noah could let it spread throughout the world and explore any corner of the world. It was only now that Noah's sensing ability could truly be said to be superb. And what Noah was doing now was to find the location of the eye. Under the cover of his sensing ability, everything that was happening in every corner of the disaster world was fed back to Noah's mind. However, since the sensing ability was a manifestation of the world's will, then, as a world-level existence, it was impossible for the enemy to not have it. Just as Noah activated his sensing ability, another kind of sensing ability turned into fluctuations and burst out from the depths of the dark red world. Like invisible chains, it first directly bound Noah's sensing ability, then like a solid barrier, it slowly pushed Noah's sensing ability back. It's being pushed back. Noah frowned, then felt relieved. That's right. Although they are both manifestations of the world's will, and their sensing abilities should be of the same level, this world is the enemy's world after all. Of course, the master's side has the advantage. Although he said this, a cold smile appeared on Noah's face. Raising his head, looking at the depths of the dark red world where the sensing ability fluctuations were bursting out, Noah spoke in a low voice. Even if I don't use my sensing ability, your position is already exposed, idiot. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's figure moved and turned into a bright stream of light. In an instant, he crossed countless battlefields and swept toward the place where the sensing ability fluctuations were bursting out. In the dark red world, the shadows of death suddenly seemed to have been stimulated by something. They actually abandoned the battle at hand and madly rushed toward Noah's direction. For a moment, a large group of Red Reapers were like weightless ghosts, swimming toward Noah. In an instant, an astonishing number gathered and once again became a dense wave. As the saying goes, once there were more than 10,000 people, it would become a sea of people. In this crimson world, the number of shadows of the Grim Reaper that could be created at will was endless. If one were to count them, one would have to add at least 1 trillion zeros behind one. Only with such a terrifying number could there be a way to fill up a world. However, Noah did not even look at the countless shadows of death that were surrounding him. He directly swept toward the deepest part of the dark red world. Instead, the swords of words of spirit appeared one after another. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In the continuous sound of the air being pierced, countless swords of spiritual words shot out like a torrential rain, mercilessly slashing through. Poochie, 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 poochie. Tearing sounds were constantly heard, and the shadows of death were killed one after another by the swords of spiritual words. Noah, under the protection of countless swords of spiritual words, killed a path and swept toward the deepest part of the dark red world. Not long after, a black spot appeared in front of Noah's eyes.